Good morning. It is just after 8 o'clock on the west coast of the United States. This is Wednesday, February 15th. This is our fourth and final session with this group of ORMAP mappers, and this is the parcel fabric training. So let's get into it right away. Let's talk about homework or discussion points. Who wants to go first? Jeffrey, you've already given one, so let's go and review that again.
Okay.
Go ahead. Tell me again.
So, I was asking about the, stating that I'd watched Frank do this a lot, where he takes a line that he just drew and adds Kogo attributes to it, and how that has freaked me out for a few years every time I see him do it. And I was really happy to see that if you do that, there is a attribute that tells you whether those Kogo attributes came from doing that, or whether it was actually Kogo'd, or whether it's calculated. So
yeah. So good. So Jeff, what you're talking about is the Kogo type attribute field, and that is not a standard ArcGIS Pro attribute field, but one that gets added for the parcel fabric, because the parcel fabric actually has a mechanism. It has
they don't kick you off.
Yeah, it actually has the controller object, the parcel fabric controller object that's actually going and firing off a process that's going to mark that attribute field as far as where the data came from. And the data is defined as either being entered from geometry or computed. Now, again, entered is pretty logical. That's, what it is. From geometry is actually when you use one of the geoprocessing tools for update Kogo. And I know I often refer to that as calculate Kogo, because you're actually calculating the field values in there. But it's also referred to as being inversing to get the information about that line or whatever that you've got. So it's nice tool. I really love it. You can do some pretty amazing things with it, including symbology, including, as it's doing in some of the newer versions, it's actually going and changing what it labels, whether it's labeling it as just a regular number, or whether or not it's labeling it as having brackets around it, meaning that it came from geometry, or whether it's got a plus or minus sign on it, when in fact it's computed and it's got some variance in there. It's not quite sure about the values. So it really is nice. I actually have clients that actually go and symbolize it, gray ones because there's some variations on there, red one being that it's in fact coming from a calculation or inversing or from geometry, and then the darker black ones being these, you can rely upon these. So it's a really nice component on there, but it is only with the parcel fabric. Thinking about it though, if you really wanted to, you could go and implement that with attribute rules, so that you could actually go and have it set up where if you entered it, it would set it. If you did a created from, or excuse me, if you did an update Kogo, it would go and set the values on there. So it's a nice way of keeping track of it. It's a good one. Elise said, I'm glad to find out that you don't have to select a line to trim or extend. You're right, it is. This is some really nice tools in here. The extend trim tool, with the extend trim tool, you have on the bottom here to allow you to extend and trim without a selection. Really nice tool. Not parcel fabric specific. It's any lines, you can extend and trim them. But as we noted yesterday, it actually doesn't extend the line. Well, it extends the line, but it has a vertex remaining if there's an extension on there. Also note on that tool, there is recalculate the Kogo attributes. So if you extend it it goes and allows you to go and automatically recalculate it on there. Denise from Benton says, I like how the splitting tool works. The splitting tool is nice as far as you could split it interactively or split it with another feature. And those people that were in the ORMAP parcel fabric and always used to have to go and make changes to natural boundaries, oh, it's a godsend now. So much easier to go and use. Who else?
This is Robin.
Yes, Robin.
I'm definitely going to be exploring the divide tool, especially when it comes to dividing polygons by area. Last week, it just so happens I was researching a pretty hefty conflict between a 1930s deeds and a present survey, where the 1935 legal description, even though it was taken by Eloquent Part, divided it by the east 10 acres and the west 10 acres of a quarter
Yes.
section. And even though back then they assumed it was an aliquot distribution, bringing it way forward, and a long story short, to the present, the two owners of the current properties had a survey done, and it shows up with a 20-foot gap. And now I'm trying to figure out, do we map it as a gap, or do we and let it go through foreclosure, because that's what's going to happen, or do we hold the assumption that the aliquot part was what the intent was?
As a surveyor, I would just recommend you, I think the first thing you need to do is look at sequential conveyances, which one came first and which one that the remainder is left in. It's just sort of, I would look there.
Yeah,
Not necessarily believing that was split at the same time, but split first. You have junior and senior rights associated with that. Yeah.
And sort of that the whole problem is that they've kind of brought that legal forward to the present, where it's the west 10 acres, and so that eastern line is a little bit in question. So anyway, I will be looking at the divide tool and looking at where that line comes in if I do end up creating a sliver.
And just remember that divide tool is not parcel fabric specific. It's on ArcGIS Pro, works on anything in Pro as far as polygons, right? Steve from Umatilla, learn to use map topology when using the align edge and disable map topology when using the move and rotate. Yes. And again, doesn't mean you have to turn off topology, but just be aware of how that works. That if you have map topology when you're doing certain topologic functions, such as move and rotate and things like that, it will impact certain other things. Be aware that map topology only works on what's displaying, not what's actually underneath there. So just be aware of that on there. Let's see somebody else. I know Brittany just put something up there.
This is Mike from DOR.
Yeah, Mike.
I was actually it was kind of nice to learn that Pro actually stores everything in meters and then shoots it out into whatever it is that we want it. I found that pretty interesting to learn.
That is, it's fascinating. Just by the way, as a hint, the ORMAP parcel fabric worked the same way. And that was how you could actually go and mix units on a line feature class, for example, so that you could have one line which was defined as chains and another line which was defined as survey feet, and it would be in the same feature class. So it's not dependent upon the actual data units, but it stored them all as one single type, one unit to control them all, and then it lets you define how you actually go and do it. So that the reality is it's actually all equivalencies. And if you go in here to project and under your options and units, you'll actually see that these distance units are all defined as being equivalent to meters. They're not actually being stored as those units. They're stored in the equivalency. All right. Yeah, that one, it's fascinating and a little bit of trivia. Great, great. Brittany from Columbia, those good to know that the line intersect tool and extend trim are similar, but extended trim doesn't update the attributes, right? Or create an intersection point, right? What doesn't split what you're going against, whereas the intersection tool does. Josh from Clackamas says he enjoyed the align parcels tool and the point to edge snapping. Yes, and I also learned that you can't work out of Dropbox all the time. We often do, but that was the issue that I was having with all those strange things appearing in my database as far as uneditable. So I apologize for that. Who else? Who haven't we heard from?
This is Andy at Clackamas.
Yeah, Andy.
Hi, I really enjoyed seeing how you were setting attribute rules to arcade. That's something
yes.
I've never seen before. I'm not sure if I'll get into that anytime soon, but I don't know. It's good to, I don't know, look below the hood, so to speak, and see what you can do and how you can customize things. So thank you for that.
Yeah, also, and just a little bit here. We have a YouTube channel that you may want to look at, because if we, let me see here, we actually have our YouTube channel here. And here's the channel link. And if you are interested in arcade or in attribute rules, you will find, for example, we have introductions to arcade for up to 3 lessons, how to just intro arcade, some conditionals, some feature sets, and we've got a whole series of lectures and workshops on attribute rules and how you're using attribute rules for annotation submittals, and that basically has to do with DOR and the COGO type component on here. How do you apply attribute rules to lines? Anyway, we've got, I think, 85 different videos up there. They average 50 minutes to an hour, but please go out there if you're looking for more to learn about arcade. There's lots of resources. I know Dean was referencing some yesterday. Yeah, there's some good resources. Arcade is amazing. It's that, if nothing else, that's a great reason to go and switch to pro. Yeah. And by the way, Dean, I'm not sure, I haven't validated, but it might be that you could actually apply attribute rules with SDE. I'm going to test that further next week, but you may be able to actually do that.
Good to know.
I was trying to do it against services, and in services there has to have a validation rule applied when you create the service. But I got thinking you might be able to go and do it in SDE, because it is, I don't know, you think you might. There's still some question there. Esri is really vague about that documentation on it.
Yeah, I just think it would do, because it's in the file, it works in a file G database. So, and I don't, once you get into the enterprise, I don't mess around much. So
yeah, unfortunately with enterprise and the SDE implementations, the reality is most of those rules are kept as stored procedures inside the individual RDBMSs, and that's sort of where it's hit or miss whether or not Esri implemented that all the way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yep. Who else?
Hey, Frank, this is Tim from Benton County.
Hey, Tim.
I learned that these incredibly frustrating spiral curves, why they're actually used, that they have the purpose in high-speed transportation when you can't immediately switch between a straight line and a curve.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That's good. Good. Thank you. I'm glad I brought that understanding together.
Yep. And I'm glad that we've got some new tools that'll really help us to plot those in the future.
It will. Good. What else? Who else?
I'm here, Wendy.
Wendy, go ahead.
I am really looking forward to working with the align features and maybe align edge tool. I just recently found out that one of my county boundaries doesn't match with the other county anymore. So I have a project there and I'm really excited to try these new tools. One
Perfect.
other thing I had a question about was one time I was using the trim tool and it wanted to trim the wrong piece. Is there a way to switch that? I ended up
Oh,
using the intersect tool instead, which is a fine workaround,
I
but
think that sorry if I spelled it right. The extender, the trim tool, the trim geoprocessing tool, is that correct? That's what you were
yeah.
talking about? Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that. But there is now, when you go and do reshape, I think it is, reshape and some of the others, it used to only, in ArcMap, it would only pick the larger unit to preserve. You can now tell it which of the two units you want to go and use. So
I'll look at that.
there are some options in there now. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Robert from DOR.
Yeah,
I found it interesting that there's a difference between using the enterprise and the SDE for the ARC.
Yeah, it's so it has not gotten simpler, it's gotten more complicated. The reality is that Pro from the beginning was always designed and sort of spec'd out that this was going to be the next generation software, and it was going to work with the internet functionality, with web services. It was going to be designed for that. Be aware, though, it still can work with SDE, so that if you have features that are stored in client server implementations with SDE, you can still edit. Still, versioning works the same. There are certain solutions that won't work that way, such as Parcel Fabric and utility management. But just be aware that with ArcGIS Pro, you can still edit SDE implementations, and it works fine. It works the same way. The only thing you cannot do with Pro is you cannot go and work with personal geodatabases. It works with shapefiles, file geodatabases, SDE, SDE versioning, enterprise services without branch versioning and with branch versioning. So, like I said, it's gotten more complicated, has gotten easier, and each of those has little different variations on them. Yeah, I was talking yesterday after our meeting here. I was talking with one of my clients that's going to go and transition into just SDE feature classes for their parcels. They're not ready to move into web services yet. And they're like, no, we just want to do it in SDE, but we want to use Pro. So yeah, good point. Again, it hasn't gotten simpler, it's gotten more complicated. Anybody else? I haven't heard from Viola yet. Viola.
Yeah, hi. I'm a little bit convoluted with using a different laptop today. So yeah, I'd say yesterday I thought the whole discussion with using arcade code within, especially, I mean, and you know this anyways, I was oohing and awing about it the entire time, but using arcade code within deriving a bearing distance, like COGO operations, like automatically using dynamic text or dynamic labels, like that's brilliant. That's like chef's kiss. I love it. It's like all that and a bag of chips.
They've done a really good job with that, and I called out Jason yesterday, but also Tim Hobson actually wrote some of that code for deriving bearings and distances and DMS and that sort of thing. So yeah, they've done a great job on there. So I'm not going to go through the list and get everybody. Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about, or we could just move forward?
So yeah, this is Bryce from Harney County. I guess I have a question. If you have feature classes part of the parcel fabric, like tax code, polygon and tax code lines, and the tax code crosses a street and there's not a tax lot line there, how does that come into play?
Well, it's an interesting question, because what you have to recognize is that the overall data model is set up so that these parcel types are dependent upon one another internally. That's why each parcel type, for example, the tax codes have a set of polygons and they have lines associated with them, but the rules do not really apply between layers. All right, so that there are things like overlaps and gaps and all that. There's no such rules set up for that, because it's focused on the way land records work, so that these are independent of one another. They don't really depend on the location of anything else. That's more for the individual mapper to go and impose on there, whether you want to do it that way.
So
There
if the tax code line was coincident with the tax lot line and you want those to stay the same, so you don't want to, if you're cleaning something up or you move the tax lot line, you have to go back in and move that tax code line, or are those all linked?
So it's up to the mapper to maintain that consistency. All right, so that if you have, for example, this is the tax lot line here, you need to be aware of that dependency. And if I turn this off and just make a change to this line here, it won't necessarily impact the others unless I turn it on. When I turn it on and make that change, it will use map topology. All right, it will use map topology to go and manage it. So I could go and select a line here. All right, and I could go and tell it I want to move that line. And when I move that line, again, when I move that line, and I just move it into a theoretical place here, it will move the tax lines, the tax code lines also with it. But if I had the tax code lines off and I made the move, that line would not move. So it's up to the individual mappers to be aware of how they model in their organization the interrelationships between those. There are no topology rules anymore. It's more of map topology that handles that.
Okay.
Did that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Then do most people bring in their subdivision polygons into the
Yeah,
parcel fabric model?
so I'm going to let Dean answer that. I'm going to back away. I'll let Dean answer that. Dean, are you on here?
What most people do is disagree on what they do. Sorry.
Got it.
There are some folks that I know there are some organizations that I've talked to that lots and plats are parcel types, and they're happy with that, and that's how they do it. There are some folks that say, you know what, subdivision boundaries are pretty well handled in the record, and we've got all that information managed with the record, so let's just use that. And then there's a group of folks that say, look, when you're co-going in that outside boundary of the subdivision, what it really needs to do is just follow the minimal information that is in the cartographic standard from Department of Revenue, which is draw the subdivision lines if it's possible to draw them. And then they, basically have a process where they grab the outline of the subdivision and transfer that to reference lines. And reference lines, as you know, is not a parcel type or related to the fabric. It's just there as reference support. So it really comes down to what is your organization. And even within the tools committee, we could not agree on that when we did we agreed on it when we did the plat, when we did it in the initial design for ORMAP. You'll know in the featured data set that plat featured data set with lots, blocks, and subdivisions. We took that out because based on a survey, it looked like most people didn't do that. And really when we did the initial design, which was way back, parcel types in the fabric tended to impact performance. So we took it out. There's nothing to stop you from doing any of the things what works best for you is great.
Perfect. And that's exactly right. It's a discussion that we often have with our clients when we're going in and looking at it. Oftentimes we'll find that they are using what we commonly consider a cartographic model, where subdivision lines and lot lines, the boundaries of lots are usually modeled using lines and points for the labels or annotation for that text to denote it. From a surveying standpoint, I know that the subdivision boundaries and the individual lot boundaries are critical, because legal descriptions will also, they'll reference, oh, the east 50 feet of this line or north 10 feet of this line. And you need to know exactly where the line is, not where some approximation dividing line is between two lots, so that subdivisions and lots we tend to favor including them in the parcel fabric as reference layers. These are foundational layers and used as references for when you are going and mapping out the individual legal descriptions. So we favor it, but we also know that there are some organizations there, it's like, it's not mandated, it's not required. So, and we've gotten along for 20 years without it. So we're not going to go to that extra work. To them, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So, and you're right. Everyone agrees. They're not going to agree on what to do. That's all.
And, just as a follow-up, I'm doing a research project right now for Eric for Polk County, in that we're actually looking at putting them in. And the reason for that is that if the lots are polygons and stay out there, you've got the lot labeling tool, which then helps you annotate the lots pretty quickly. If the subdivision is really a parcel, there's some things you can do with that. If it's part of the topology, when you move lines, it all moves together and so forth. So you're not then jumping out to a reference line that's totally independent. So we're looking at doing that. I don't know what we find out, but like I say, we ran in, and when we did the initial design, we just felt people were not agreeing one way or the other. So again, the design is the minimal. It's what everyone could agree on. We couldn't agree on it, so it's not there. But like I say, I'm going to be adding not blocks, just lots and subdivisions in. And again, we're also looking at it from a standpoint of it ties better in our business process to our chain of title in our CAMA system. So in our CAMA system, we reference lots as part of legal descriptions, as Frank was alluding to earlier. That's how we do it. But if we had a lot polygon and percentages of lot polygons, not tax lots, but lots, that may do some stuff for us. Like I say, we're looking at that in our design. So I'm sure none of this answered specifically your question, but just gives you some ideas.
Two more points. One, purely from a resource requirement standpoint, it actually takes less lines, or excuse me, takes less computer space and display speed to display a polygon than it does a series of lines that are implicitly relating to that polygon. So if you're going to do subdivisions, you might as well have a subdivision polygon instead of the 15 or so lines, because sending it out over the internet, going and doing that, it's much faster to do that. That's minor, but it's still there. Secondly, you remember on the first day I had a comment, and I know many of you, it just sort of went over. The parcel fabric itself, as you're using it, it changed what you think you're doing, so that you're not just cartographers. You are, in fact, building up a library. You become curators of land records. And if you're curating land records, you should have complete land records. You should have, here's the subdivisions that are in my county. Here's the individual divisions within those subdivisions. It changes the way you think about what you're really doing. You're not just producing a map, you're creating a record of that transaction or of that subdivision in there. So 2 other points. Again, these are points I often use for helping to persuade, but we're at that point. If you want to put them in there, by all means, put them in. If you don't, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
I think just stepping out on that, just one last shot so we can kick a dead horse, is that you doing your job for me is making sure my cartographers can do their job, and that the management of the land records has to be so efficiently done. I essentially look at it as a byproduct. So as long as Christie's doing her job, she's doing it correctly, she's managing the land records because it's built in. So the land record is essentially could be thought of as a byproduct of her doing what she needs to do her job. And it's just built in. And that's where I think the subdivision lot issue steps us up another step to make that happen. And like I say, I don't know all the implications of that. I haven't done it yet. It's one of the projects I have to do prior to a full implementation at Polk County. And I think, I often get concerned that, we've been coming to you guys about parcel fabric and the design for over a year, and Polk County has not gone yet. And that is because this is going to be what we do for the next whatever. The last time we did a major design at Polk County, for a real system, I don't consider moving info to ORMAP to have been a major design change. But we went to ArcInfo and developed our transaction business model in 1995. And that's the transaction model process we still use. So what we want to make needs to work for a long time. And maybe then I can retire.
Thank you. Good question. Really, as you can tell, that's one of those things that a lot of us have to talk about. And it occurs a lot. This is something that we all as a profession are considering. What are we supposed to do? What's a minimum? What really should we be doing versus that? All right, so let's move on. I have 2 outstanding things. I have a question from Robin yesterday regarding a PLSS and setting up for a survey department. Hopefully I'm going to have time at the end here to talk about this. If not, Robin, you and I can get together afterwards sometime. Doesn't necessarily need to be today. I also had a question from somebody regarding putting curves in and how to go and map out an easement. And I'm sorry, I apologize. I've forgotten who was sent that. Hopefully I'll be able to address that at the end of here. But I do want to go and make sure that we cover as much of this material as possible. All right. So update COGO. Again, I think we talked about this already one time. With your selected lines on here, it will go and allow you to go and update the COGO, and you can update all values, or you can update only values that have a variance on here. And that's for your distances and or your directions or bearings on here. Be aware that at 3.1, there's also a new option here where it will allow you to just update all of those records that have, or all those features where the distances are null. So it's not just variance, but whether or not it has a value in there. And that's been added with 3.1. COGO attribute type, or COGO type attribute, we've talked about this a lot. This is a really nice feature, one of the nicest ones, and we at Panda, we use this a lot. Merge. We're going to talk about a merge. So let me just show you a merge. And I know a lot of different areas in the country, they call these different things, but let's do a merge. All right. So a merge is where you take 2 parcels and they're combined together so that they become one. Let's take these two parcels. Let's go and take it. And in order to do a merge in the parcel fabric, we're going to tell it to go and create a record so that we record this transaction. And then we're going to go and select our two parcels. Notice one of the things that's interesting is that when I'm selecting parcel, I'm not selecting lines, I'm not selecting points, I'm only selecting the overall parcel or the polygon on there. Again, the parcel fabric understands that a parcel is not just the polygons, but it's also the polygons and the lines and the points that are unique to that. All right, I have my two selected tax lots. I want to go and merge them into one, and I click on the merge tool. The merge tool is one of those where, oh, this is a simple functionality, and this is a simple transaction. The reality is this tool has hidden complications in it. For example, I have two options here. One is I can merge it into an existing feature, or I can merge it into a new feature. All right, so that I can merge it into a new feature here. And then I have the ability to either keep my original two features that I have selected, keep them, and in the parcel fabric, it will mark them as historic, or I can tell it, don't keep them, in which case it will delete them. I want to mark historic here. The next thing is that there's this template. I could use a template to not just merge them into the same parcel type, but I could merge them into a different parcel type. I have subdivision turned on. I could actually go and merge these two into a subdivision and tell it, this is my demo sub, and it will take all of those, merge them into one, and it will put it onto that other layer. It will create separate lines for it, merge it into that one. So this one tool, this one merge tool, which we always think, oh, this is the simplest, the easiest way to do it. It's got complications in there as far as what we do. I'm going to make it and say, I want to go and merge it into 4130. I want to keep my original ones. When I do this, it automatically goes and merges the two. When I look at historic, it goes and keeps the historic. Let's do these polygons here. I have one new polygon here that I could go and attribute, and I have two historic polygons here that are now marked historic. I also have a historic line here. I have a historic line here. Thank you. Not coded with that subtype, source type on here. So I'm still getting that, but I have that line here that says that. So that's marked as historic. If I go and clear this out, I can see it's marked red. It is historic. So it's keeping track of it on there. Again, there's lots of things I could do with that merge tool, but it is this, conceptually, it's the easiest one to understand as far as what it's doing. It is taking two things and making them one, whether you make them on the same layer, the same parcel type, or whether you make them in a different parcel type. Questions? By the way, this works with or without the parcel fabric. The only difference is without the parcel fabric, you actually don't create retired or historic, but everything else works the same. I could take these. So if I turn this off, I could take these parcels here. I'm sorry, these parcels here, take that. I can merge them. Again, not parcel fabric now. And I could tell it to go ahead and make these a subdivision polygon. Again, not parcel fabric, so it's not creating any historic, nothing on here, no record. So there's no lines or anything associated with it, but it works the same way. It is a ArcGIS Pro tool. Good. Clip tool. Clip tool sort of works the opposite of that. And that if I have a polygon here, and let's go and let's just create a new record. All right, and from that, I will go and create a new tax lot. And because I'll go, I'm demonstrating a parcel fabric, I'm going to go and build it. So I create lines and polygons and such in here. All right, and I'm going to select just my one polygon, and I'm going to do a clip. The clip actually allows me to go and take and clip out from the underlying layers everything that is within the overall boundary of my selected feature. Clip works with polygons or parcels. It does not work with lines. It works with polygons. If we're doing it with lines, it would be a split, not a clip. Okay, so when I do this, there's several options again. If I look down here, one of the options is just clip everything that it's on top of that is editable and turned on. So in this case, if I have this clipped, if I have this check down here, it's going to go and clip everything underneath here that's turned on and editable and displayed. So when I clip on this here, say, okay, clip this out. It went and clipped everything that was underneath there. Let's turn off historic just to show it. I have these new features in here. If I go and select them, there's my one remaining parcel there, remaining parcel there, remaining parcel there. Okay, it has clipped these lines. If these lines had COGO values on them, they would in fact be, if they were COGO valued and entered, they would now be computed values that are displayed on there. So it automatically will go and take care of calculating what the remaining proportional distance is along those lines. All right. And it, depending upon how you've got your parcel fabric set up, it may go and take and calculate the new acreage on here. Let me see, what else am I forgetting on here? The difference is in here, let me go and undo this. And let me undo it one more time. There we go. And I have this one parcel here. All right. If I do a clip and turn this off, it then becomes sort of the standard. Okay, here's what you have selected. Now you have to go and tell it what you want to clip it out of. And again, I can tell it just select everything that's underneath there. And what it's going to do is it's going to collect, it's going to tell me these are the points, here are the lines, and here's the polygons that it's going to clip out on here. Be careful of, because it's actually reflecting not just this line and this line and this line, it's also reflecting this one and this one and this one and this one and this one. So you just want to be aware of that and watch that. I can tell you, Esri recommends this one. I recommend the other one. I just say if you're going to use clip all, just be aware of what you have turned on. That's all. Just be aware of that, so you're not clipping out of a section or anything like that. Any other questions? Any questions at all?
Yes, I have a question. This is Robin.
Yes, Robin.
So this is something we've not talked about. As part of a cartographer's responsibility is we have to pass on to the CAMA system changes in area for every polygon that we have, or every tax lot that we have. So in this case, would we use the preserve the area that intersects and then identify what those areas are to pass on to the CAMA system?
Let's talk about area. All right. And I'm calling up Dean, I'm calling up what you've got here. So inside the parcel fabric, this is non-organization, this is the parcel fabric standard. All right, there are actually 3 fields that reflect area. This is before you put any of your own attribution on there. The first one is the shape area. This is the one that's on every single feature class that's got a polygon area. It is the one that automatically the software will compute what the number of units are on there. In this case, it's square feet. All right. You also have what's called calculated area. Now, the calculated area is often the same as the shape area, but you can set up an attribute rule to automatically have that reflect back what the mapped area is in acreage. That's often one of the standard attribute rules that's loaded into the parcel fabric once you create one, so that you can have it reflect the square footage, you can have it reflect the acreage on here. And then there's also another one called a stated area. This is reflective of a deeded acreage or something that has a specific and explicit acreage called out on it. You can put that in. So I'm still not talking about but I'm talking about the standard ones. So if you have a value in the stated area, for example, if I have, this is 10 acres to start, when I perform a clip, the software will automatically return the number of square feet on here. It will also calculate this. And if I have a value on here, it will return the prorated area of that parcel. Okay, those are built into the parcel fabric. Now, if you have others such as tax lot acreage and tax lot feed and map acres, you can go and implement attribute rules that automatically take these values and move them over there. But just be aware that these 3 values are standard in the parcel fabric, and they will automatically be calculated. Dean, go ahead. I'll stop.
The tax lot feet and the tax lot acre, of course, are what we are in ORMAP, and that's what you would send to your CAMA system. And map acres is obviously the shape area divided by 43,560 or whatever. So and then we use shape area as that. There's actually a tool there for you to look at, Rob and everybody else, in the default toolbox that is calc ORMAP acres. And so I wrote it as a tool because wasn't sure that you always, if it was a rule, it always happens. And so I wrote it as a tool that's in your toolbox, and it populates tax lot feet and tax lot acre. And I can't remember, I'm thinking it's using the calculated area for that. And then after you run your, whatever your process is, you could then populate those 2 fields as part of your process. So you do have an example of how that can work. It is a tool in your toolbox, and it's, I think it's like calc ORMAP acres. And I apologize, I didn't go over that yesterday. It is not a standard tool. I just put it in there because we found that it was useful in populating, obviously, or tax lot and tax lot feet, tax lot feet, tax lot acre, their requirements in the Gold 2 data sets. And again, being that they're part of the data standard for ORMAP, I gave you tools to populate it. And it builds off what Frank said.
And so, yeah, just to sort of pull it together, it doesn't get simpler, it gets more complicated, but these tools that you can implement when you go and implement this, it can be automated for you and you don't have to worry about it. But just be aware that in the parcel fabric, you automatically have 3 different attribute fields that you can look at for the acreage on here. While I'm in here, I might as well give you another little tip. I don't know whether we were talking about the setting up your data and configuring your data. One of my little tricks is that your shape area, if you're really never concerned with square footage, you can actually go and take your shape area and do it as a rate, 43,560, and then put a suffix in there of this, and let's put it down to 2 decimal places. And let's go and let's discard that change, and let's save this out so that it will display now inside of here. If I go to attribute role here, it will display in my shape area my number of square feet, but display it back to me as acreage. So if you're always using with acreage, you could go and tell it to configure it to automatically divide it by another number, and that will reflect back what that is. Fun with numbers, right? Yeah. I love the way it's configured.
And just one last piece, the reason it's not an ORMAP tool is there are some counties that just take what is written in the document, and then they can populate tax lot feet and tax lot acre from that, and not have it be calculated from COGO, and just say, look, we just want to grab it from there and put it in. And that's reason tax lot feet and tax lot acre have always been separated, going back to discussions in about 2006. So some history there.
It's logical. Split into COGO. This is actually where you can go and take a line, and it doesn't have to have a record on here, just a line, a polyline. All right, you can take that polyline and use the split into COGO. Split into COGO lines here, and it'll go and take that line, and you want to make it tax lines. Split the lines with existing. We don't care about that because, and it'll give me the COGO values for all of them. They will all be, in fact, from geometry, but they will be COGO values on those lines. So we can take polylines and split them up into COGO lines. Nice tool. Sequential numbering. This is one that that Dean was talking about yesterday. This is actually a really, really nice tool, because with sequential numbering, which is right here, you have the ability to go and number multiple components in here. So you can choose the layer on which you wish to number them, what attribute fields you wish to go and number, and then your formatting component here, and tell it what the starting number is, what the sequencing number is. And as you go and go through those features, it automatically will go and number them for you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as you go in there. It then keeps that value for your next one. So you can now jump over and go and do it for the remainers in here. And it will go and do that for there. It's a really nice tool. It builds upon the old zipper tool. Excuse me, not the zipper tool, the snake pin tool in ArcMap. Again, nice change. It's very, very useful when you're going in. You've got a lot of data that you want to go and populate with correct attributes on. Duplicate vertical. I think we talked about this on Monday, or on the first session. This is where you can actually go and take a polygon. And again, this is not those tools that I've talked about so far. These are not Parcel Fabric specific, but I can take a polygon, any polygon, and I can go and duplicate it vertically. So the duplicate vertical, I can tell it what my offset is. And again, the Parcel Fabric is a 3D. It's X, Y, and Z. I can tell it an offset here and how many times to go and duplicate it. 10 times, and I can go and duplicate it. Once I've done that and I select it, I can see that in fact, I now have 11 of them. It allows you to go and duplicate this vertically. Used a lot for condominiums and things that have vertical type of attribution on there. It's a nice tool. We have several counties that are looking to go and begin mapping and modeling condominium units by going and building the units and then duplicating them vertically, and then they'll go and they'll extract them out into 3D. Cul-de-sac tool. There is a cul-de-sac tool for creating cul-de-sacs. Let me go and create a line here, because in order to do this, you need to have a line. Let me go and create a cul-de-sac line, a connection line. You need a center line. All right, let's go and do that. Take that center line tool. I can then go and build a cul-de-sac off of there, tell it what line layer I wish to go and build them on, tell it the street width, 25 feet, the radius here is 60-foot radius, and returns of 20 feet on here. And if I look at it, it will go and create that. It will create the line feature classes for me. What happens if I have a curved line? Let's go and create a curved line here. By the way, this could be a tax line too. All right, go and create that, go back to the cul-de-sac. It will go and create it off of the end of that curved line. All right, what happens if I have a stub out of here? And I go to cul-de-sac on here. It will go and create it off of the end point of the line that you have selected. What happens if I have this thing here and I have a split? Let's do it a multi-part. It's an easier way to demonstrate this. If I have a multi-part where it's an offset cul-de-sac, and I go back to there, it will go and build it that way. Questions? All right. So inside the Parcel Fabric, we're going to flip back over now to Parcel Fabric workflows. Okay, the Parcel Fabric, the workflow that you use for merging or combining or combinations or consolidations, whatever you call them, is create a record, select the parcels to be merged, select the merge tool, and then attribute it. This can be used to create other parcel types by combining them all together to go and create these other parcel types on there. Again, seems pretty simple, but you just want to recognize there's lots of options in there when you're going and doing that. Splitting by a meets and bounds description. In this case, you create a record. All right, again, with the Parcel Fabric, you always want to be thinking, I'm going to create a record. I want it to keep track of what I'm doing. Input the boundaries using the traverse tool. Close the traverse. Create the seeds. Build the parcels. Align the parcels. And clip and then attribute those new parcels that you create. Let's demo. Let's get out of here again. Yeah. So let's say that I have a new parcel that's described by meets and bounds. First thing I want to do is I want to create a record on here, create a record. Then I want to go and input the traverse. So I'm going to go in here. These are going to be tax lot lines, and I'm going to tell it to start. And it turns out that I'm going to use ground to grid on here. And on the ground to grid, this one is supposed to be due north on my deed. All right, and I'm going to say this is actually supposed to be due north on here. Note, I didn't specifically go to a point or a point. I just went on that line. Ground to grid, if you're not specifically looking for a scale factor, you just have to, what that line is, that's all. It could be anywhere, but that's what that line is. It's that assumed bearing on there. Now I go in here and I say, okay, now I'm going due north on here for 200 feet. All right, and then I'm going to use a deflection of 45 degrees, and I'm going to go 200 feet. Then I'm going to go due south for 200 feet. Then I'm going to go southwest for 200 feet. And it's telling me my closure, what my square footage is, and everything else I need to do. Once I'm done with that, this is a single, I can go and get off of my traverse. I now have 4 lines in there. I can say create seeds, and it will tell me I have a single parcel. I can then go and build that parcel. My next step is the align parcels. Make sure that it's aligned correctly. In this case, because I built it there, I know it aligns correctly, and I'm not going to do anything. But anyway, align parcels. Go ahead and tell it these values in here. You want it to go in and go to there and to there. Tell it to generate the links. Show me where it's going to go, and say align this up. And then I go in, now that I know it's aligned up, then I can clip it. Clip it out. Again, if I use this value, this option here, I can just go ahead and tell it to clip it, and it will clip everything underneath, including the parcels and the line that it touches. Turn that off just to show it. And I can go back and selectively attribute this, make sure they're all valid on here, and I'm done. I did that fast because I have no problems on there. Questions?
I have a question, please, Frank.
Yes, go ahead.
This brings up a question from yesterday using this split tool also, and I was curious. Can you come back, say the next day, if I were to stop halfway through this process, is it possible to come back the next? Let's say I was working on it late in the day, and wanted to come back the next morning and finish up this this record and this project, and using this tool. Is it possible to say enter the traverse and then come back the next morning and finish up?
So let's go all the way to creating seeds. All I have is I have that traverse on here. All right. And if I say select things that are part of the record, if I go over here, I have 4 lines. That's all it is. So yes, if in fact you're using a record, it automatically is populating everything with the record. Let's say that I somehow missed that record. All right. I closed everything out and I saved it at least, right? I saved it. So I save my edits. What could I do? I could, in fact, say, I'm going to manage records. We talked about this just a tiny bit yesterday. I could say, find this record. So to find a record, I might actually go in and select that line. It's one of the options I have. And I could say, show me the record that's associated with that line. And it will go and do that. There it is. And I can say, make that my active record. All right, so it could be, I activate that, and then suddenly I have that. I can then use that to say, well, show me everything that's part of that record, and it will allow me to go and do it. I also have the option to go and say, well, show me everything that I did in the last 7 days. In this case, this is the only thing I'm really saved. Or I could say, show me everything I did in the last 31 days. Or I could, there's lots of ways to pull up the record, and it's pull up that collection of things, no matter what state you were in. As long as you started relating things to that record, you can pull it back up and say, yeah, that's what I want to do.
Okay.
Especially if you're working in a versioned database structure, such as either an enterprise implementation in which you're using branch versioning. Dean, go ahead.
That's where I was going to go.
Yeah.
And this is where one of the real advantages of branch versioning is that you can manage this very, very nicely. And then when you get into design, look at the relationship of your branch versions to your records and just be consistent there, because if you're looking at the wrong version and you put the record in another version, you won't find it. So there's some things you should look at in design. Just adding on to that.
So just also to show you a couple things that are hidden on here, in 3, if I look here, there's actually some options for my versions, or excuse me, for my records. It says I can tell it to give me a warning if it turns out that I forgot to change. And I start going and building something over here. And I think I'm at least a kilometer away. I guess I'm not a kilometer away. I'm less than a kilometer away. Yeah, let's do this. Let's build that there. So in the options, it allows me to go and set how far away. I could be a kilometer, I could be X number of feet or whatever. And when I'm doing that, it gives me a warning. It says, oh, you're outside the extent of this record. Do you really want to build these 2 parcels that are associated with the same record, or do you want to create a new record for that? So it does allow you to do that on here. That's one of the new options that are available in here. So yeah, to answer your question, a record is an organizing element, and it's really nice to start using them. And it works both in a file geodatabase. It also works in versioning. Branch versioning, if you're unaware of it, it's amazing what it does now, in that it simplifies a lot of the storage, but it allows you to go, and because branch versioning and the creation of features with the version you're on is actually time-stamped, not just date stamped, but it's time-stamped. You can actually roll back to a specific minute, actually a specific second, and say, let's figure out when this was built and go back to that specific time. Yeah.
Okay.
Branch versioning is really nice.
Thanks.
Okay. Any questions on this workflow to go and do a meets and bounds parcel? This is the one that's sort of most comfortable. This is the one that most people think about. Josh, did you have a question or comment? Nope, sorry. I just saw that your mic was live.
And hi, this is Viola. So like this is probably part of the main reason why I'm taking this the second time, is because like between you and between like some of the other ways I've learned how to do like parcel fabric stuff, like for like creating a record, and then like copy lines too was also involved in there, but it doesn't look like
that's coming up.
do that.
That's coming up. That's coming up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So yeah, I'm just trying to pay attention and sort of see all the different options to refine the process. So this is really good. This is what I've been waiting
Yeah,
for.
this is the one that intuitively people will constantly be drawn to. And this is the one that Esri likes to go and demonstrate. And again, when would you use this option? When you get a meets and bounds description that doesn't reference the parent parcel. This is just a new parcel. You don't know, is it related to another parcel or anything else? It's just, this is a parcel with a meets and bounds only. And you have to go and lay it out and say, oh, that's where this thing goes. Okay, so it's just a pure meets and bounds. It doesn't have any references to anything else. This is the workflow for it. The second one is where, in fact, you know the parcel that it's supposed to come from. Okay, this is one in which it might say that part of this parcel which lies south of this line. Okay, that's the second option. And with this option, what we're going to do is we're going to create a record. We're going to select the parcel that we're going to split with the meets and bounds. Then we're going to do this copy lines 2. And copy lines 2, what it does is it takes the geometry of an existing parcel and allows you to go and change that geometry, manipulate that geometry to create something different. You then go and divide and input those new lines, create seeds, build the parcel, and then attribute them. Notice there's no clipping on this. Okay, there's no clipping here. This is because you're already using an existing geometry. So let's assume that one's right. And then we've got a new one. Create a new record. All right, we create a new record. We don't care about ground. Well, and then what we're going to do is we're going to select that parcel. And we're going to say copy lines 2. And we're going to copy lines 2. And it's going to go and copy those. It's going to mark our existing one that we had input. The one that we had selected, it's going to mark that as historic. And now it allows us to go and take this parcel and change the geometry. So in this case, I can go in here and I can say, well, this right here, I want to go and divide that line. And I'm going to take, that line is 500 feet long. I'm going to take my description says 100 feet from that northeast line. Go ahead and divide that. Then I'm going to go and do a traverse. And with that traverse, I'm going to go from here. All right. And I'm going to go and do a couple of courses, 45 degrees, southeast for 300 feet. And then I'm going to go 15 degrees southeast for 150 feet. Oh, sorry. Southeast. All right. 150 feet. And then maybe the next one is 75 feet southeast for 50 feet. And the description says to the southeast corner of this property. And we know it's not closing. So this is where we set the closing here. This is that open traverse I remember I told you about. We're going to set this and say, well, it says on the legal description, it's supposed to close to that point. And it's going to show me, no, there's that far, it's closed off. I'm going to go and close it just to, there it is, it's closed it out. All right, so I went and put my traverse in. Now I'm going to tell it, this line is right, everything is the way that legal description said it's supposed to be. And I'm going to create my seeds and I'm going to build them out. It marked my original one historic, created 2 new parcels, and using the lines that used the existing geometry as my overall boundary. Again, no clipping. I used existing geometry. That's when I use copy lines 2. Discussion.
Hey, I got a question.
A DOR.
Go ahead, Dean.
Sorry, I think someone else.
Yeah, Elise at DOR.
Okay, Elise.
I noticed that in this process, you clicked up top on the menu, parcel record workflows. Why did you do that?
I want to make sure I understand.
It's up
So,
on top.
oh, up on here. Yes,
Yeah.
up on here. There are certain tools and just understanding where those tools are located. Okay. On previously, whatever I was, I might have been on this tab or another one. I actually clicked on the tab for the parcel record workflows because I know that's where my tools were.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And so again, I could have, it's a good question. It's a good question. How do I get to the tools? There's a couple of ways. One, if you know your tool is located here under the tab, you can click on the tab. I can also click on any of the tool galleries. That's what this is called, the tool gallery. I could click on this little down arrow and it shows me all the tools. It's the second option I can do. There's all the tools. Now, all of those tools, those are actually also on the modify pane. There's all those tools that are on here. So again, it's knowing where the tools are, knowing what tools you're going to use, and knowing where the tools are. I could do that, or finally, I could go anywhere. There's a search up here. There's a search here. I could have gone and clicked anywhere and typed in the name of the tool, Traverse, and it will go and show me the tools that deal with Traverse, that have Traverse in the keywords. All right, there it is there. So while it's a little disconcerting when you're first switching from ORMAP to ArcGIS Pro, because they've renamed things, they've consolidated things, they refer to them differently, there are generally some ways that you can find these. The first one is on any of the tool galleries, whether it's an edit tool gallery or parcel record workflows or quality, any of them that have these tool galleries, if you pull down, that's actually all the tools that are available to you. All right, so you could go through here and find them and do that. Or you could go to the modify pane. The modify pane lists all your tools. And you'll find that as I do, you'll create and dock that modify pane there. You'll be looking to go and use your tools off of that. And then if you still can't find it, you can always search, and you can search on the modify pane, or you can search over here on this overall tool. This will allow you to search any command anywhere. Trying to make it easier, but it is a little disconcerting when you're first starting, trying to figure out, well, where it is. Just know that those ORMAP tools, they consolidate it, they evaluate it, and they put them all together so that they're using verbs. What do you want to do? Not what the tool was called. What do you want to do? I want to go and duplicate things. I want to go and move them. I want to go and align the edge. I want to go and intersect the lines. I want to divide them or split them. Think about verbs. What do you want to do? And then use that as the first way that you look and search for things. Thank you. Thank you for asking that. I often forget about it because I'm just so used to using this after a while. All right. But yeah, it's the way that you access this is multiple ways to get into it. Different ways you can tunnel down. Okay, Dean, you had a question about this tool or about the workflow.
Yeah, I had a question about the workflow. It's not clear to me why the first workflow that you demonstrated includes a clip and why the second workflow doesn't include the clip. I guess the clip as a step in the workflow at all seems kind of out of place to me, or I'm not understanding why it's there, because I guess my thought was that the whole kind of like create parcel seeds and build polygons was kind of doing that work for us. So could you go into a little bit more detail as to why we use the clip there?
That's actually it's a good question. So the difference is between that first workflow for splitting things and the second workflow is that with this first one, where you actually wind up doing the clip, it's because you're given a legal description, and that legal description does not reference the parent parcel, doesn't reference what it is. It just says, here's the parcel. Begin at this point. It might have some points of commencement and some courses over to the point of beginning, and then you got the point of beginning, and then you have, you know, sort of the overall courses of the traverse, but you don't know what parcel it comes from. You don't know where the parent is that's going to get split, or even if it is a split. All right, you don't know that. That's where you use this, so that you just build this. You just go and build this parcel using the traverse. It's like, I don't know what this thing is going to do, but I do know that my description says start here, go here, go here, go here, go here, go here. All right, you don't know what you're going to be splitting it out of. That's that first option, because again, you don't quite know how it fits together or anything else. The second option says, no, this is a piece of this. I go back down here, sorry. That this is a portion of this parcel, and here's how it's described. That's what the second option is. It already tells you in the beginning, it's a portion of this parcel here. Boom, let me get off of this and into here. It's a portion of that parcel that you're going to be splitting out, so you know what parcel it comes from. Okay, that's when you do the copy lines 2. All right, so in which you copy the lines 2, and it says, okay, I'm going to split this parcel, because you know where it is, even if you might have some meets and bounds portions of it, but you know that's the parcel that you're going to split it out of. Okay, that's the difference between the two. And when you do that, because you know it's coming out of that parcel, and I'm making an assumption here, you're comfortable with the current configuration of that parcel, you now know that you can rely upon that geometry. And then you can say, oh, here is my new parcel, and I can split it. I can draw lines in here. Let's go and draw a line here to here. It goes from here to here. All right, that's good. That's where the new splitting line is. And you'll often find this. You'll often find this when you have a deed. Thank you. Let's go and turn these on again. When you have a description that says an agreement between these two landowners, come on, between these two landowners conveying a portion of property between them. So in that case, you pick not just one, but you pick both of the parcels, and you say, copy the lines too. And you copy the lines and you say, they are redefining this boundary. So let me go and take that line and just change it, delete it. All right, and replace it with a new line. So again, you're making changes to the geometry. Now, when I do this and say, rebuild this, it's giving me the new geometry on here for it. So it's sort of understanding what that deed is for, what that deed is telling you to do, what that legal description on that deed, it's telling you, oh, these two adjoining owners, they're adjusting their lines and they're going from one to the other. That's what's commonly called a parcel line adjustment or boundary adjustment. You use the copy lines 2 and you select the parcels that are impacted and you just make that one adjustment. Or if you know the legal description says a portion of this property lying south, there's the references an existing property. But that first option is you have no idea where this thing is. You just running out that meets and bounds description to see what it is. It's a good question. Thank you. Very, very thoughtful.
Thank you. That clarifies.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
I was
Go
to
ahead,
say, Frank, so I just have to say, this is actually incredibly helpful. Because yeah, like I think it sort of sewed up the little bit of information that I was trying to gather, because we had been like, for example, like we had been doing like copy, like it's like, okay, cool. Hey, we're going to use these existing parcels. We do like a copy lines 2, then we do the entire meets and bounds around the entire thing, and then we end up with it like not quite the same lines. And I was like, it's like we would end up instead, we'd either replace the lines out, it sounds like to me, or we would just do it from the first option. But you usually want to just add the lines in the middle if you know where it's from, and sort of like just start from there, adding in the extra lines. Yeah, so because you don't want to do like for that second option we do in copy lines 2, you don't want to like do the entire like, okay, well they're gonna do the entire meets and bounds around the entire parcel, and obviously it's going to be skewed ever so slightly off as we do better measurements over time. And so that's what sort of throws off. So we instead, if we wanted to do or needed to do or wanted to improve our parcel data set in one way or another, which we have a lot of improving to do, that we would just want to use option 1 and then clip out the remainder, it sounds like, when we're trying to do it that way.
Okay, let me go in, and I don't want to freak anybody out, but all right, I don't want to freak anybody out, but here's another little hack, a little cheat. All right, let me go and take these lines. Let me go and do it the right way. Let me select this parcel and say activate the record. Activate the record for this parcel there. Oh, sorry. Let me just create a new record. Sorry, I forgot. I'm just going to go and take these lines here. All right, I'm going to take the lines and I'm going to go and calculate the COGO on them. Update the COGO on them. All right, so I now have COGO on these lines. And I'm going to tell it to label them, calculate those COGOs. There it is there. All right, let me show you a little hack. If I know that geometry is kind of right, but that the dimension that's listed on there is just a little bit off. Somebody put it in there wrong or something, but I don't want to go and change the overall mapping of it. I just want to go and tweak the attributes on here. I could take this and I could say copy lines 2. I could take this. Let me see here. What are we doing? I'm on lines. I could take this and I can say copy lines 2. All right. And then I could go in there. Come on. I could go in there and I could take and individually tweak this. I could tweak this and say, well, maybe that's supposed to be 0.5. And this is supposed to be 0.5. And reflect what it's actually supposed to be on here. All right, and actually tweak those legal descriptions on here. Now, again, I would be updating the other attribution on here and everything, but I would then be able to go and tweak it without really changing much in there. And I can tell it just go and build this. It's going to go and take that old definition and make it historic if I want, or I can go in and update the boundaries on here. often find that we do that. Not often, that's something that seems illogical at first, but we often find that instance where we might have to do that sometimes. Again, I don't let it confuse you. Just if you don't quite understand that, just let it go. I apologize for doing it, but it's a pretty advanced procedure that we often will use. Let's go back to here. Splitting by an aliquot description. It's the next workflow. On here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a record. We're going to select the parcel, and that's going to be the parcel polygon. Then we're going to divide using the divide criteria, whether it's the percentage or whether it be the distance. We'll select the edge, tell it to go ahead and divide it, and then we'll attribute those new parcels. So in here, we'll go over, we'll say, this is the new parcel. We will create a new record, create the new record. Then we will select the parcel that we're going to go and split as a result of this aliquot description. All right. Then we will do a divide. Now that divide, like I said, we could do it by distance, which is the width. And we want to take 250 and we tell it which edge we're taking it from. And let's say it's taking it from the north edge here. It will show us the preview on here and we can go ahead and divide it. It will then go and divide that and split it. It will create the parcels. It will create the line. It will not, remember, will not split that line, will not split that line. You just want to remember that's what that is doing on there, but it is creating it. So again, this one's pretty easy. It's a little bit tougher when it's the north 250 of the west 400. It's a couple different processes you got to go through, but it's the same sort of situation. This is an aliquot split, and it's a straight boundary. Questions on this? So by the way, no one's asked a question yet, but what happens if I did want to go and split that line? If I wanted it to be split, I have two options. I could go and tell it, and let's go over to modify. Let's find split here. I could tell it to go and take this split, and we actually only want, let's clear this. Let's take our line here. There's our line. I can tell it to split it interactively, and then I can tell it to go ahead and split this line at that point. And we'll go and split that line. All right, or I can tell, by the way, I can also tell it to split this without even selecting that parcel, and I can click on that and it will show me what it's going to split on there, and it will split that line. It's an option if you want that split. If it had COGO, the split would automatically recalculate that COGO on there. All right, split by an aliquot description with a straight boundary. This is a simple aliquot. You know, can you use this for half? Can you use this for a PLSS split? Anybody? Yes or no? Yes or no? Please answer no. Please answer no. Because a PLSS split is not by a straight distance. It is by the measurements of those two. All right. So that if this was a PLSS split, and let's go somewhere where we have a larger area. Let's assume that that's a PLSS component out here. We would in fact go and do a copy lines 2. We would select this, do a copy lines 2, split this line in half, this line in half, this line in half, and this line in half. All right. And then connect them up and break it down that way. as you can tell, I'll just keep running through these unless somebody stops me and says, hey, what about this? So if I have a curved line or an irregular boundary on here, how do I do this? Create a record. Select the parcel to split. I can do it this way, in which I input the split line, and then perform the split and attribute it, or I also could do that copy lines too if I really wanted to do it. So let's show you a little bit more interesting ways to go and do this. So let's go here. Let's do a create record. And here is my parcel that I want to go and split. And what I want to do is I want to take 100 feet away from along the right of way. All right, how do I do that? Well, there's a couple things I could do. What I would do is I would take that and I would then go and either draw out the line. And again, you could select these lines and then do parallel and then use those to trace, or I would use a trace tool. I would do a split and I would do it interactively. And I would do a trace tool. Trace tool. All right, if I go and zoom in here, trace tool, I can start. And with the trace tool, you have the option to do offsets. So if I type O here, it gives me an offset. I could say I could trace with an offset here. And I want to offset this by 100 feet on here. All right. Now when I do this, it's offsetting 100 feet, but I want it to go on the other side. I want it to go here, 100 feet there. So I can trace it there and go through. Sorry. Trace. And trace it to there, and then finish by going parallel to this. Splitting it through there. Now, again, I started on the bottom. I could have been a little bit more careful in that, but it did split that. Trace has the ability to go and do an offset on here. All right, I could trace. And when I do a trace, I can either right click and go to trace offsets, or I can type O and tell me where I want to go and trace this. Really, really nice tool. The trace tool with offsets, and use the tab to flip back and forth. All right. You guys are still with me, right? You're still
So
there.
that you split the polygon, and it also created a tax lot line.
Actually, if you note, when I did the split, I said, I don't even have to go and select that. I could have done it without a selection, and it would split the polygon and the lines for that when I did that. So again, I'm going to use the same record here. In this case, I'm going to tell it to go and trace. In this case, it's tracing all this stuff here. I can start here and say, okay, let's start here, and then let's trace with an offset this line here. And I could even extend it out to here. And note when it traces, it's going to try to follow the closest line. And then I normally will go and just say, I'll go back here and say parallel to this one at the end. Why won't it let me go parallel? Let me switch over there, parallel to this end here. And I'll just go through and cut them all. Yeah. Allows me to go in there and trace that.
So you don't need it creates a seed?
So it doesn't even have to create a seed because I'm actually working against the lines and the polygons at the same time because I don't even actually have a selection. It's just splitting anything, which brings me up to another thing. You know, I had one of my clients show me this. It's like, wow, this is cool. He was looking for the most efficient way to do a split, and he knew what the line was. He actually was trying to split it along a hydrographic line. It's like, I want to split it there. What do I have to do? And I was telling him, well, you create the record, you go and do this other stuff. He goes, well, can't I just go and do this? And he started it, and he said, can't I go and do that? And because he had a record and the parcel fabric was watching and listening to everything he did, it actually split. Again, he was splitting without any selections. It split the polygon that he went through. It split the lines he went through, and it created, in this case, a polyline for him. And I'm like, I can't argue with that. If you know, in that certain instance, that's your split, yeah, you know, bravo for him to find a faster way of doing it. And it goes and creates, again, 2 parcels. Let me get off a split on here. But the split tool has the option to split things without actually selecting them. And with the split, depends upon where I split. If I'm on a line, it will allow me to go and split that line wherever I click. If I'm on a polygon, it will split whatever I completely go through. So if I go in here and do this, it's not going to split anything because I haven't crossed polygon boundaries. But if I go down to here, now it's going to split that polygon here, and it's going to split that line, and it's going to split that line on them. I can't
So
argue
that's
with it.
putting, what record does that put it on?
It's putting it on this record right here, tracking it all with that record. So what the record is, it's recording what record went and retired this. It's recording what record went and split that line. And with that record gets this polyline and this one here, getting it off of here. So yes, if you're looking for the easiest way to do it, the problem is this is a polyline, there's no dimensions on it. But I couldn't argue with him. I said, yeah, if that's what you're going to do, that's a really efficient way of doing it. Just using a split. And it goes and creates them. Doesn't dimension any of them, other than if you've got existing COGO, it will update that, but doesn't put any dimension in there. But it does. Make sure that you have parcels. It splits the parcels. It goes and creates the lines, so make sure you have lines on it. Again, it's that function of the parcel fabric controller object. It makes sure that the parcels that you create has polygon, which is defined by the lines. It has lines which are on the boundary, and it has points on the ends of those lines. That's what the parcel fabric controller object is doing here.
So Frank.
Yeah.
Wendy, you could use the 2-point line features and then update COGO attributes, right?
You could very easily, yeah. So that if I were doing a split, okay, let me go back here, let me go and do a split of a parcel. I have a record. I have an active record. I can do a split. I can use this. Now, this is a regular line. This is not a 2-point line feature, but if I wanted to use 2-point lines, remember a couple of things. I could put my 2-point lines in. All right. Put my 2-point lines in. Select those 2-point lines. And then I could do a split, but not by interactively. I could do it by feature, in which those are the features it's going to split. What do I want it to split? I want it to split that, and it will go and split it. Tools, learn the tools.
I love
So-
watching you work, by the way. Your hand is so smooth. You know right where to go.
Well, yeah, I've been, doing it a lot. But yeah, it's so again, the key, and again, what I just did, the only thing that the parcel fabric added was it made sure that it was marked historic and it added points at the end here. I could have done this without a record. I'm going to do that without a record. Okay. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go and create lines. 2-point lines. I'm going to create lines. I can define what they are. All right, there's my lines. I'm going to select those lines. Unselect that. Unselect that. There you go. So I've got my lines. Now I can tell it I want to go and split something, but I'm going to split it by a feature. When I do it by a feature, select the feature that you're going to split. You're going to use it to split. And then what is your target? There's my target feature that I'm going to split. Go ahead and split it. Again, the tools inside of Pro, they have taken what we had in ORMAP and just sort of supercharged it. There's amazing things that you can do with these tools. And again, if you decide to use the parcel fabric, it even goes even further because it starts marking things historic if you're going to start keeping track of those. Okay. All right, that's split. And again, split, you can use this for aliquot descriptions with curved or irregular boundaries on here. Processing a subdivision. Why don't we hold on this until after the break? All right. Let's take about a 20-minute break. Is that good? Anybody not want a break?
I like a 20-minute.
You got it. Let's come back at 10 minutes after the hour. Right? So it's about 10 minutes of. So let's come back 10 minutes after the hour and we'll pick up and we'll talk about processing a subdivision. And you're going to come back with some questions and comments about what I've demonstrated in the last half hour or so. All right. Perfect. I'm going to pause the recording. All right, we're back. And this is, again, about halfway through this final session. So we've got 2 hours, a little bit less than 2 hours left here. So let's start with this. Did we have any questions, any comments about what I went over the last half hour to 45 minutes? Elise from DOR has a question that says, what are you copying lines to? And this is important. Thank you for asking that. When we go and use that copy lines to function, again, we use that with a record because it's a parcel fabric type of function. And we select a parcel. When we click on copy lines to, the first thing it asks is, where do you want to copy these lines to? And it gives us the option. Now, recognize that with Pro, if it's not editable, if it's not available, it doesn't show up in that list. So one of the reasons why Pro sometimes seems to be a little bit slower is because it pre-populates those lists and makes sure that it's available before it actually provides you with that option. So in this case, the only layers that I have turned on, I have tax lot layer and I have subdivision layer. I have tax lots, and I have subdivisions. If I were to cancel out of this and have my condos and my lots also available, all right, then I do a copy lines to, and suddenly it gives me all of those available. So again, the lots define what you're creating, what you're copying it to, and what's available in that list is what's turned on and available for you to edit. But this is something that I want to make sure we understand. With copy lines 2, if we copy it to the exact same layer that it came from, it will go and take that parcel that we have selected and mark it historic automatically. However, if we copy it to a different layer, if I take, right now I have a tax parcel, and if I take that tax parcel and I copy it to a subdivision, it will not mark the one that I had selected as historic. It will just keep it and create whatever. It will take the polygon and the lines associated with that parcel and copy them over to the other layer. So in this case, if I copy it to subdivisions, it will go and copy it to subdivision and gives me, if I go and look at my attributes, it will only give me subdivision lines on here, and it will give me that subdivision seed. So just recognize that the copy lines 2 has some intelligence built in. It says, are you copying it to the same layer, or are you copying it to a different layer? And it's that's going to sort of determine what gets copied, what gets copied, and what layer it's copied to. Okay. Good question. Thank you, Elise. All right. Any other questions or comments about what I illustrated? Because I did a whole lot there before. Any questions? Because I'm going to try to put it all together here with how do you do a subdivision? How do you process a subdivision?
I have a thought.
Go ahead.
This is Wendy.
Wendy.
Well, I was thinking about how Dean said yesterday he'd bring in the whole subdivision as a record. But then as soon as you adjust a line or combine or anything, it's on a different record. So I don't know, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how I would work with that. And is that important?
Wendy,
That everything inside has different records. I don't know.
Important. No, that's very important. And let's differentiate between these. All right. Let's see if we can bring some clarity to this now. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to process a subdivision. And basically it says create a record, then go and input the subdivision boundary, close it, create a seed, build it, align it, clip it, attribute it, and then go and do the lots within there. I think this is a good way to explain it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a record for the subdivision. Okay, for the individual subdivision on here. And that's going to be my subdivision layer. All right, and that will be, I'm just going to go and create it. There's my sub record. And that's going to keep track of the actual subdivision boundary, the polygon, and the lots that are created as part of this subdivision plat. That's what I'm going to use this record for. The individual tax parcels, I'm going to create different records for those. Because I'm thinking of a record as being the results of a single transaction. All right, so I'm going to take and create a record for every transaction that I'm going to be building in here. But because the tax parcel is a result of that subdivision plat, also the lots are created as part of the subdivision plat. That doesn't necessarily mean, and again, this depends upon county to county, organization to organization. It doesn't necessarily mean that the tax lots are created at that time of subdivision. Often a subdivision will get recorded, and then the individual lots are not going to get created until they're either fully approved or the developer asks for you to create separate lots for them to be sold, Or some organizations don't even create those tax lots until they're actually sold, and they leave the tax lot for the developer. Depends upon how the individual county does it. Dean, you want to pick up on this?
Yeah,
or-
and I really like that. That is one of the reasons that we are looking at, or I am looking at for Polk County, that subdivisions and lots are their own parcel type, whether they're part of that, whether it's all one record. And the record includes both parcel types, the subdivision related lots with the tax lots. That really gets into how you define the record itself. But in our process, we have our cartographers are part of that preliminary review. So in the preliminary review, they could create the subdivision, they could create the lots that are associated with it, do all the acreage calcs, do that preliminary approval, and then it just sits there. It's not visible as part of the tax lot map, but it's part of the geodatabase, whether you're local or versioned or whatever. And it's waiting for you then to once it's been approved and someone goes in and says, oh, well, now we need tax lots. Well, then you would do whatever fancy thing Frank does to transfer those lot polygons or lot lines into the tax lot feature class. And at that point, now you're ready. It's now part of the other parcel type and you can keep moving on. The other cool part of that is you can then relate this on when do you want to rotate stuff? When do you all align it? When you're all done with that, then you just move your subdivision boundary into the reference lines so that you meet Department of Revenue mapping standards and it's in there. So again, this really, really points at that. Unlike ArcMap, which I always looked at as kind of flat, we now have process that we can implement as part of it. So how's it going to make it easiest for you in your business process? Some counties that I've worked with in the past get it all at the end, and then it's just an update process and they're done. And at that point, making lots may not be as, but in our county where we do this two-stage process where it can be 6, 8, 9, 10 months between when a subdivision is approved, that when it comes back around and now you need to make tax lots. So just again, just what with some organizations in Oregon.
And it's not just that subdivision gets approved, but it's at what point do you create the new tax lots and assign them new numbers? And I mean, when do you actually create the new lots? And this really gets into that understanding of what are you managing here? And so I'm going to ask for, and I know I can't get a show of hands, but I'm going to ask for somebody, first person that answers is going to be the one that I'm going to use. I have two ways of doing this. Do we want to explore the process of workflow, or do we want to explore me inputting a traverse to build a subdivision? There's two ways I could do this. I could take this parcel right here and say, oh, the owner of this parcel is going to subdivide it. Let me go and show you how that works. Or I can say a plat has been filed. Let's run out this traverse to determine what the boundary is that's recorded on that subdivision. You tell me, do you want to make
This
it
is Mike
hard
from
for?
DOR. Can we do it with a traverse with a road in the middle?
Oh, we're going to do it with a road in the middle. Yes.
Oh,
we're gonna
cool.
Yeah. But you want to make it harder for me, or do you want to make it easy so we just talk about the process?
As hard as possible.
Oh, of course. Of course. I love it. All right. Here we go. So the first thing I'm going to do, just to let you know, is I'm going to go and figure out what dimensions are here. So I'm going to take these lines. All right. And I'm going to unselect this, and this, and this. I think I just have 4 lines here. Yeah, 4 lines. And I'm going to go and just do update Kogo on them. So at least I have Kogo on there. By the way, just be aware of this. Right now, because I did update Kogo, ArcGIS Pro has actually set a filter. So the only thing that I can select right now are lines. And that's what that little pop-up was telling me, that, oh, it's restricting what I can select. So if I go in here and select this, didn't select anything, right? It did not select that parcel because it still is trying to go and update lines. Be aware of this. Be aware that because of that, it filtered that selection on there. All right. Let me go in here. I think I did that. Maybe I didn't. I got distracted. Take this line, this line, this line, and this line. Just have 4 lines in here. Go to update. Not there. I want to go to update Cogo. And tell it to update these values. There they are now. Now I see them. Again, think about that. The active tool is filtering the selection. Pay attention to that. Otherwise, you'll get frustrated. So just to be, someone who's made this mistake over and over and over again.
That's a big one.
Yeah. It is. Previous versions, like in 2.8 and even 2.9, it didn't tell you that. Now it tells you, it reminds you. So just pay attention to it. All right. So let's go in here and let's figure out what we've got. And I'm going to create just a general traverse. I'm going to do something that's close to this, but not completely. So, all right. I've created a record. I've not created, the record is active. I've not started with anything yet. I've just created a record and I'm going to go and do the traverse. With the traverse, I'm going to go and do subdivision lines because this is going to be a subdivision polygon. All right. Now, when I do this, I'm going to tell it to start here and cheat a little bit. I'm not going to make it totally. I'm also going to go in and say that this, I'm going to enter the ground to grid and tell it that this line is supposed to be 15 degrees northeast. All right. There it is there, here to here. All right. So now it's going to go and offset it. By the way, I know it's about 3 degrees difference. Okay. So now, why is this giving me? Let me just make sure. I got an error warning here. Let's look at the symbology here. And I suspect that my scale dependency is set where I'm probably so far beyond it. Let me go change my scale dependency up a little bit so I can make sure I see them all with the same way. All right. Back to my traverse. All right. Traverse, I'm going to do a 2-point line. My first line is 15 degrees north to east, and it's going to be 1,100 feet. I'm going to go and assume there's shortages or overages, and I'm going to stretch my parcel to fit into that, unless you tell me no. All right. Then I'm going to go and this next line, I assume is going to be 90 degrees due east. And that's going to be 1842 there. Ah, look, so maybe I need to make that instead of 90, get a little bit closer. Maybe I'll make it 84 degrees southeast, see if it's closer, better. Then I want to go, let's just go due south of that. And this is 1,090 feet. And then I'm going to go, what is this here? So if I have the constraints on, the dynamic constraints on, it would show me what that bearing is. But instead, I'm just going to click on this and let it go and show me what that bearing is and what the overall distance is. So let's say it's supposed to be 6 degrees southwest, and overall it's 2014-09. Again, the brackets means it's digitized. So this says 2014, is that right? Yeah. 2014 distance. All right. Sorry, this was not southwest. What was that distance from here to here? Let's turn on the constraints, as much as I hate them. Turn on the constraints and it will tell me what my direction is and my distance, and these are absolute constraints and for distance and direction. So that is 88 or 83, 53, 57. That was northwest. All right. And it doesn't quite close by 1/13 of a foot. Again, I fudged that in, I'm sure, but I didn't. I wanted to show you sort of the types of things you're going to get. Is everybody okay with me doing it that way? We're comfortable with that? All right, I can go and tell it that I want to close this thing, tell it how I want it to be adjusted on here. By the way, notice it actually says it closed it within 0.13, and that's because my closure tolerance is set to within 1 foot, automatically close it. I'm not going to go deal with it. If it's more than a foot, I'm going to tell it what it should be. So now I have my exterior traverse for my subdivision. We're all good? I'm going to ask you, please ask questions right now, okay? Interrupt me. Now, I've got a closed traverse. I don't care where it's located, but it is a closed traverse right now. I can go and create the seeds for it. And it's a single seed. It is my polygon. And I tell it to go ahead and build my polygon boundary. The build will go and allow me to go and automatically create lines and points for it together with the polygon on here.
So since there's overlapping lines, it's not going to make any changes to the parcel fabric right now until you.
Now, at the moment, I haven't told it to clip anything. I'm just sort of stacking things on top. Now, I'm going to go and adjust this now.
But your map topology is off right now?
Actually, it doesn't matter much on here. I actually have map topology. I could do any of these on right now. It's not going to matter for the operations that I'm doing at the moment. Okay. Got to sort of rethink topology. Topology, and I say it's kind of cute. It's not your father's topology. It's a different type of topology, a different way of thinking about topology. Again, this map topology has to do when you're moving things. This rule-based topology has to do with whether or not the topology rules we have defined only says a polygon has to have lines, lines have to have points. That's the only thing that topology says. It doesn't say anything about anything else. So just recognize that when you're dealing with the parcel fabric, you don't quite pay as much attention to the topology. All right, we've built this. Now let's go and we built it. We can go and attribute it. And let's call this demo is the attribution of it. All right, let's go ahead and align it now. And when we go and align this, it's going to go and use our selected parcel. And remember, whatever we select is what's going to get adjusted. Now I can say, take the existing data and adjust it into this, or I can take the new one and adjust it into my existing. You tell me what you want me to do.
Put the new into the old.
Okay, thank you. So the first thing I do, I say, okay, I'm going to move the new into the old. First thing I do is I look at the overall tolerance, because it will only make adjustments inside the tolerance. And if this is 10 feet here, well, I got to go and move this thing up to like 30 feet here. Go and figure it still isn't even working against that yet. 35 feet. Still doesn't get that point, but I'm getting dangerous as far as collecting over here. Let's go and see. Let's do 40 feet. Nope. 45 feet. Now it will go and collect that. Now I'm just going to be careful with that because I know that's an issue. The next thing is, let's go in and tell it not just to make sure that all the points are inside the tolerance, but let's go and tell it the point to edge snapping. Let's go and make it 45 feet on here. Once we set those up, now we can go and tell it to generate temporary links and tell us where it's going to put it. And if you'll note, again, it's on the showing the preview. This is where it was. This is actually going to move the new up 8.22 feet, 41.74 there, and it's going to take that point and move it over here. Why is it not a link in here? There should be a link here. I can tell it to add one and add from here to here, but it already said it was going to go and put it there. I'm going to go and undo that. Sorry, I missed it. That point to that point. All right, I can tell it again. Let's go ahead and generate this and to make sure what it's going to be. We're all good. I'm ready to tell it to align this. All right, let it go and align this. We're good. Everything's good. If I did this correctly, and if I had, in this case, this was a fairly simple one, I don't have to do anything else for the alignment. I can use that and just say, okay, do it. But if I had some areas down in here that didn't quite catch up, they're not quite coincident yet, I might have to go and use the Align Features tool, which, by the way, is pull down off of the Align Parcels tool, because that's how often it gets used together there. But because I paid attention to what I was doing, I don't have to make any changes on it. All right. Okay. So again, my thought is I'm going to create a record which is reflecting everything that's on that subdivision plat. That's what I'm going to do. Am I going to clip out my tax parcel? No, because I'm working in Polk County and I'm not automatically going to split up the tax parcel. I'm just going to create the subdivision plat and the lots and road associated with that subdivision plat. That's what I'm going to do with this record. Okay, so I'm not going to do a clip. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do, maybe I should ask Viola, what would I do now? Copy lines 2.
There you go.
There you go. I would do a copy lines 2. I would take this parcel, which I have selected, which is my subdivision parcel. I would go and say, let's copy it over to lots. I want to build my lots now, and go ahead and let it do a copy lines 2. Let it take that subdivision line and copy them into lot lines. Let it take that subdivision seed and copy it into lot seeds. Now, this is a process that you want to sort of be aware of what you're doing. If I go here and look, it's only showing what's part of this active record. This record includes not just the lots I'm working on, but it also includes this subdivision. So in order to make sure, and if I were to go and say, let's select this line, what's actually going to do is it's going to select the subdivision line and the lot line. Don't do this. When you go and do a copy lines to a different layer, turn off the layer that you had before. Turn off the layer that you copied it from, because it's now in the same record, it's only going to show you lot lines. That's all it's going to show you. All right, by the way, let's go and see if we have labels on here. We do, but our labels are not showing here. Why are they not showing? Boundary. Okay, and we should have this on here. Oh, excuse me, I turned on subdivision, sorry. Let's turn these on. And reset these. They want you to be so close in. All right, so now I know here's my subdivisions. All right. Dean, thank you. And thank you for going and arranging this and organizing it. And we'll talk later. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and start taking my lot lines and dividing this up and making lots out of it. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and take this lot line, this outer boundary, and I'm going to go and divide it up. I'm going to use my divide tool, which is located off of the parcel records workflows, or I could just go into my modify and do it there. Let's get tricky. Okay, let's get tricky. Let's also select this one. So we have two lines now, and I'm going to divide them into equal parts. And I'm going to divide it into two equal parts. So it's going to split this line in half, split that line in half, and then I'm going to go parallel off of that to go and create my road. Simple enough. There it is. Say divide, get off of the divide tool. There's my divide. Let's go and create, I'm on lot lines now. So let's go ahead and there's my snap to my point. Let me turn these off. I don't like these. There's my endpoint there. There's my road center line on here. I'm going to go and parallel that so that I can go and create my road right away. If it's a curvilinear one, you'll often go and input the, use a traverse to input the road center line and then parallel that road center line off. Okay. We're all good with this. Copy parallel. Copy parallel of this line. I don't want digitized lines in. Let's turn these links off so I never get that anymore. I'm doing lot lines now. And I want to go parallel. What's your average street width? Is it half of a chain or is it 50 feet or what do you tend to use?
40 is pretty common.
40 or is it 20?
40 or 60.
Okay, so let's use 30 feet as here. Okay, 30 feet, and we'll do it on both sides on here. Say okay. All right, so that created parallel lines in here. Now I have to go in here and make sure that they in fact are splitting. So the tool that I would use is I would use a line intersect tool and say I want to intersect this line with this line, and intersect it here. All right, and intersect this line with this line and intersect it here. Go down to this other side, and I want to intersect this line with this line and intersect it here. This line with this line and intersect it here.
Why can't you select them all and planarize them?
I could have, but I then would have had to figure out what my planarized distance is on there. I could have done that, but again, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. There's lots of different tools in here. It depends upon how you get used to doing this. I can go in here and tell it to calculate my COGO values for me. Update my COGO on there, just so I know how long this is. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to take this line and I'm going to divide it up. And I'm going to go and divide it with certain values. I'm going to take that line and let's say I want to go from the end, because I'll go from this end here. I've got 1,800 feet. Let's start with, so the first one, remember, is a single value. The second one is multiple recurring values. And this next one has differing values. Let's go and do this. All right, and let's go and say my first one is 200 feet from here. And let's do 4 of those. All right, now let's do a 60-foot road right away. All right, and on here, as I'm going through this, it's going and telling me what I have left. In this case, I have 980. So let's do 200 feet again, and let's do it 4 times. It's going to tell me what I have left on here, and I'm going to go and use this. So while I'm inputting this, I can input the values that appear on the outside boundary of that subdivision plat and let it automatically divide this up. All right, automatically will go and divide that up on here. When I zoom in, it will go and show me what they are. Same thing here. Now on here, the difference is because of the way I set this up, if these are repeating these same values in here, it will go and automatically keep those values for me. So I'm going to go and just say, okay, 200 4 times, then I'm going to go 60 feet, then I'm going to go 200 for the rest, and then leave whatever's left here. And then it tells me there's 354 on this one. Good. Okay with that? Okay. Oh, I did it the wrong way. Let's undo that one. Okay, and I tell it I want to start from, in this case, I want to start from this end, from the start of the line. All right, so that it will put the 60 here. There you go. Okay, there it is there. All right. We're good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and create, I'm going to make this a simple subdivision, but I am going to create a subdivision here. And I'm going to go and connect these lines up. So I'm going to use the create tool and create 2-point lines in here. But I know I'm going to try to save myself some extra clicks. And instead of going to have to click every single one, I'm going to tell it that each time I draw a line, go to here and say, don't continue the line. Just let me start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. All right. Now, again, there's a lot of ways of doing this. I could draw this line and I could tell it to just repeat it out a couple different ways. In this case, I'm going to go and just connect up these lines here. All right. So in here, let's go. I'm going to start here and I'm going to go to here. And then I'm going to go here. And I'm going to go to here. And just a single left click, because I've set it to not be rubber banding and continuing, it allows me to go and input these on here. All right, I'm done with that. Now what I can do is I can go in here and planarize all this. I could select them. Again, I can go and just go here and say, okay, let's select all of these lines in here and planarize them. I really don't want to planarize that. I don't care about that road center line. All right, so let's go to planarize. Planarize is here. Let's tell it to go planarize these. Again, warning me, it will only allow me to select lines right now. All right, we're good. I now have 47 lines. I can go in here and I can select. Be a little bit careful with what you're selecting, Frank. I can select this line and this line. I want to get that line out of the right of way. Unselect this. Unselect this, 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 and this. So I only have those. We're good, and I will delete those. Now, maybe I have what's called safe site corners here. And I want to go and create safe site corners. There actually is a tool called Fillet. And I tell it to do a fixed, and what's the traditional one? Is it 25 feet or something in there? Is that correct?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay. So now at this road right away, again, this is like the line intersect. I tell it, click this one and this line, and then tell it what quadrant it wants that to be in, click it, and it will automatically go and trim it for me. This line, trim it. This line, trim it. This line, trim it. All right. Notice it's also recalculating the COGO for me on there. We're all good. So my lines should be done. These are the individual lots in here. The only thing that's left here is I got a line I didn't take out. That line there. Let's delete that. Let's say I don't want my road center line, or I want it on a different one. I might put it in a different layer. Now, my lines are all complete. Let's check to see if I have any gaps in them. So let's do a create seeds, and it will go and create seeds on any closed polygon. Let's turn our labels off here. So I can see whether or not it's created all of them for me. Good. I look good. Don't have any gaps. If I had a gap, a seed would definitely be moved in the middle of whatever the biggest polygon or the smallest polygon it was creating on here. If I'm good with the seeds, I can now go and build out all of my lots. I've now built all of the lots on here, and it has selected them. So if I go now, and this lot here, this one happens to be the road. And let me see if you actually have you don't have one for the road. But again, I could say this is the road polygon here. but let's go ahead and attribute these. And starts with 1 and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or maybe it goes 1 through here and then here to here. Let's do the easier one. So I'm going to go in and number them using the sequential numbering. By the way, I can clear this. It's only going to act against the, it's going to act against the polygons on that layer that I've actually gone and told it I'm going to work against. So I'm going to work against lots. I'm going to put them in the name, and it's going to be, let's pad this with 2 spaces, right? And tell it to sequential number here through here. Now, if I go through this, it will go and number that as the next number. And then when I come through here, if I go down, it will number the road again with the next number and such. So I have to be, there's one of 2 ways. I can go here to here and stop, and then take it up again and go here to here and stop, take it up again and go here to here and stop, and then take it up again and go here to here. Or I can be a little bit trickier in what I'm selecting. Again, I'm only selecting lots, so I can do this. All right, and let it automatically go and sequence those. And let's move in a little bit so that that actually is going to go and show us what it is. And I guess I actually started on 9 when I went through. All right. Are we okay with this?
Hey, Frank, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So if you lift off on those first 5 lots and you complete it and you try to start again from the next 4, the next 4 will be 1 through 4.
No, it will use the starting number again. So if I start on 1 again, it will go 1 through there.
Okay, gotcha.
Fail. So it would start again. I obviously had started on 1 before, but yeah, or a 9 before is what it was.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I should be able to go and say here to here is, why is it failing?
You didn't tell it how much they increased by.
Thank you. Thank you. There you go, 1 through 5. And then this would still be the same thing. So again, because of the way the tool works, it's only going to go and number the ones that you include in when you're drawing your line. But in fact, it will allow you to do that.
Did you just
So
renumber those? It's not 9 through 12 anymore?
that's right. It's now 1 through 5.
Okay.
Okay. So again, depends upon how you want to go and do this. You have that flexibility once you learn how to use the tool on here. So again, I want to make sure find out if anybody has any questions on this. Good. All right.
I have a question prior to the numbering.
Okay.
So if you were drawing a more complicated subdivision where you had to draw out the meets and bounds, when would you rotate it if rotation was needed?
So if you'll note, one of the things that I do is that I always build from the outside in. So I would build the outside subdivision, rotate that in, and adjust it to fit. And now, from this point forward, if I'm building from that subdivision polygon, and let's actually go and look at that now. If I go and select that subdivision polygon, the attributes of my subdivision, come on. The attributes of my subdivision, not only does it remember the area and the misclosure on there that occurred, but Is this not turned on? There's actually a maybe it's just the lines. I thought it was the polygon remembers adjustments, but it's the lines that remember the scaling and rotation. The line remembers the scaling and rotation. So from this point forward, anything I build from that inherits that scaling and rotation. So if it were calculating the bearings, it would all be relative to the plat, not relative to if I had actually built them in by Kogo. So from the standpoint of how do you build this, it's always build the biggest thing, rotate that, scale it, make it fit and adjust it, and then build from that bigger thing. And then it inherits all of the rotation, all the scaling, all of that is all relative to that record, if we will.
I was thinking maybe you'd just use ground to grid on it, but you don't even need to
Even
use
if
that then?
Even if I did use ground to grid, it inherits ground to grid and stores it on the lines.
So you don't need to use it when you're,
Yeah. So and if you looked, even when I was building it, if I went in here building on here, ground to grid was on when I was building it. Yeah.
okay.
Okay. All right. So, sorry, let me go back here. All right. So I have taken a single record, and on that single record, I built a subdivision polygon. And then I took that subdivision polygon, did a copy lines to, and used those lines to go and split up and build the actual lot configuration for here. I have not touched condos, so lots here. I've not touched that tax parcel at all. So the tax parcel hasn't been split yet. It is only, in fact, it's not set up to be split into the individual parcels. So what happens when I have a new transaction come in and it says, oh, here's this new deed that conveys out lot number 5 of this. What do I
Frank,
do?
can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
I'm going to throw a little twist in this. We've got one road polygon for the subdivision to define that as a roadway. If I wanted to, if I had different names on those 2 roadways, how would I address that so that it was in the record?
I still have my same active record, right? So where do you want to split it?
I'm not sure. That's what I'm asking.
So
what would be the best way? I think I would probably draw an X across there, but I don't know.
let's do that. Let's draw an X. Okay, so would we go here to here, or how would we do it? And it really comes down to how do you want to go and do this, right? It depends. Do you want to go, I've got midpoint snapping on these individual lines. I've got midpoint snapping turned on. So I could say midpoint of this line to midpoint of that line. All right. I could split that. And then I say midpoint of this line to midpoint of that line. Go ahead. I could do that. And look at what it just did, because it's in the parcel fabric. It created those lines and it created the points on the ends of those lines for me.
Okay, good.
Good. Again, it depends. If you'd wanted to do it this way, you could do it across that way. But to answer your question, if you're tracking it with a record, parcel poly or the parcel fabric is watching you. And as soon as you make a change in a polygon, it's going to make sure that it complies with the rules. If you draw the lines, it will then make sure when you go and build it that it complies with the rules. But this is the easiest way to go and do this if you want those 4 different road polygons in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now let's get back to my question here, in that I have now a new conveyance division. I have a new deed come in, and that new deed says split out lot number 5. What do? I create a record for that deed. Deed for lot 5. Okay. I now have a record that's going to track this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and select that lot, and only that lot. I'm only going to select this. And I'm going to do a copy lines 2, because I'm going to take this. And again, I could do a copy lines 2, or I could do a duplicate. I can say duplicate this lot onto my tax lots. I now took all the lines, all the polygons, everything else that's unique to that lot, and copied it up to my tax lots. If I turn this off, I now see here's my new tax parcel with all the lines associated with it. And now I can take that and I can clip it against my tax lots and tell it to go ahead and clip that out, and clip out for that. Let's turn off historic right now. And now I have, there's my, what else the developer has. Here's my new parcel for that one lot number 5. And I'm good.
Wasn't discard remainder selected? How come they both stay? When you did the clip.
When I did the clip, the discard remainder as it relates to the parcel fabric means to go and take the original parcel and mark it historic, not to delete it, but mark it historic. This is the remainder in here, which is what this is here. This is the historic parcels, the overall one. Here's the remainder on here. Yeah, it's kind of a, if I say clip on here, you're right, it is kind of a, that basically is discard. What it actually means is create the remainder, not discard the remainder, but create the remainder parcel.
What are those other options?
The other options. These are basically standard type of non-parcel fabric remainders. Let's explore them. Okay. So let's go over here somewhere. And let us go and let's turn off our records. We don't care about that. Let's create a polygon. All right, now let's do some clips. First clip is when we say discard remainder, it's going to go in here and it's going to go and do that. And basically is going to clip this out and create the remainder parcel on here. That's really what that means. All right, that's first one. The second one is preserve. Preserve the area that it intersects. So if we do this, it goes and preserves the area and gets rid of, deletes everything else outside. By the way, this is a really cool option. This is a new option with 3. This option allows you to go and clean up things that are outside of a jurisdiction. For example, maybe you have a county boundary and you want to clean this up for mapping or anything else. You can select that and tell it to get rid of everything else outside of this. That's what this option is for. For parcel mapping, it's a little bit, you really don't want to do that, but for other options. So that was preserve. Contain. this goes and we'll go and clip out and delete everything outside the clip area. Sorry, that's what I'm actually looking for. It's actually going to delete everything else outside my entire database with this. That was the new option to contain. Preserve is just everything within what is selected. Let's cancel that. This one is outside, everything outside. Everything outside in my database gets deleted. That's this new option that they just put in 3.
And I thought preserve looked kind of scary.
No, this one is really, and there's some justification for when you might use it, but it's something you don't want to do trivially. Sorry. I got to wait for this thing to finish now. It's got to try to recapture all this. Come on. I can be. Depends on how patient I want to be as far as whether I crash this and restart it again. There we go. Okay. And then finally, this option here is the split, in which it preserves both areas. And this basically is just a cut. Now, the difference is with this cut, we actually have this piece, which is the one we had selected, and then it also preserves the 2 pieces underneath. All right, so this has this piece, the one we were cutting it with, and then this piece and this piece, nothing gets impacted by them. And that's it's different from this one, in which we tell it to discard this area inside here and mark it historic. So this one gets rid of what's inside of here. All right, so we only have one thing left, but with the parcel fabric, it would mark it as historic, but in here, there is no historic. So it just deletes what's cut out. This second option, this other option, splits it. So it's in terms of how severe it is, this one keeps it. This one discards it. This one deletes everything outside what we had selected. And this one deletes everything outside in your entire database.
Is that just because you have the clip all editable features?
No, that depends on what I have turned on here. In this case, I didn't select anything to be clipped. So yeah, you could say I could limit it by saying, okay, now let's figure out what we're going to clip on here. It's doing the same thing. It just depends upon whether I pre-selected or not. Good question, though. Yeah. I sometimes sort of just go over that. So we come back down to the building of a subdivision. Again, lots, subdivision. Does this help you to understand a little bit more how you might use records and what you want to include in a record and when you might want to create a new record versus that? Does that help? Or did I muddy it even more?
No, it's clear as mud.
Yeah, it's yeah, you just want to, again, and I was having a discussion earlier on. Records are one of those things where when you first start, it's like you kind of understand, but until you're using it for a while, and then suddenly the lights go on, and it's like, oh, that's really how I want to use records, is to do it that way. To the point where I've got one client that uses a record as the primary storage. It's a city, and they are not really dealing with tax parcels. They're dealing with land development approvals. So they'll create a record for a proposed subdivision, build all the proposed, by the way, they have proposed subs, current subs. It's not historic, but it's proposed and current. So once a subdivision is proposed, they'll create a proposed subdivision polygon, then proposed lot polygons. And then as it goes through the process and approvals, they'll update the record and let that record go and populate everything down. And then once it finally gets approved, they'll take it and they'll move it. They'll change the parcel type from proposed into current. They don't have to remap it. They just have to change that parcel type, and it goes and changes the layer it's on. So they can keep one layer of proposed developments and another layer of these are the current developments on here. And again, an interesting way of using records and keeping those records as part of your overall management of land records. Okay. Are we good? So some of the nuances on here, is that when we went and built this from the outside in, we built it and we let it go and adjust our subdivision lots, our subdivision lines, so that it would proportion overages and outages between there. And it did that. And then when we built things off of that, it proportioned those. But what happens if internally we have shortages or not? There's actually on the divide tool, there is this down here that tells us how many we've got set up so far, what's left, and then we can tell it, well, what do we want to do with this? We can tell it, go ahead and proportionally distribute the difference between what that line says it is and what I want you to split it up to, and it will go and proportionally distribute those. And it'll do that for overages or for shortages. Interesting. Now, so we were talking about topology. Topology has historically been used to go and tell us, where do we have a gap? Where do we have an overlap on here? Well, it turns out that in the parcel fabric, we have on the quality tab, we have a couple of interesting tools. One is this over here for gaps and overlaps, where it says, let's go and analyze our tax lots. And in the tax lots, let's go and make in red any gaps we have. And then in yellow or green, show us any overlaps. But we know that there's gaps and overlaps, for example, for roads and alleys and things like that. So let's use the maximum width that if it's, so only show us gaps and overlaps that are up to 6 foot wide. Okay, just only show us those. And we go ahead and clip on it. And when we clip on it, it actually is going and showing us a little dotted line around here, and it analyzed our current display area. So I can go in here and analyze this area, and it doesn't show me any here. And I can analyze this, and it doesn't show me any here. Oh, I was a little quick there. Well, Dean's data is too good. I'm gonna have to break it. So let's go in here and let's take and edit the vertices here. And all right, let's make sure, how big is this? Oh, that's a little bit too far because I told it 6 foot. Let's make it an overlap there. All right. Let's go out here and use this highlight tool. All right, and look at what it shows us. It shows us that, in fact, we have an overlap there. Does it fix it? doesn't change it. It just visually goes and inspects and shows us that we have something there that we should be fixing. All right. Here is where the parcel fabric differentiates between that and topology as we used to know it. Because one of the things we've got to recognize is that topology actually changed our data. When we went through traditional topology, it would go through a 3-step process. It would start and it would go and crack, or it would take any features that were part of that topology and intersect them and create vertices on there. That was the cracking process. So that would create all kinds of vertices on your polygons, on your lines. It would insert them all over the place. The next step was what's called clustering, in which it would take all the vertices that I just created and existing ones, and if it was within a cluster tolerance, it would snap them together. In other words, anything that was in that tolerance was considered the same values. But what that meant is it would constantly creep, and every time you checked it, it would slightly change your data, and it would creep a little bit. And then once it went through that cracking and clustering process, it would go and run through the rules and validate them and say, okay, now let's check to see whether the coordinate values for these vertices comply with the rules. So old school topology actually was a destructive process. And we've known that since ArcInfo 1. Bean always went and changed your data at that level. Most people weren't concerned at that level, but sometimes some of us were. So Esri has recognized that maybe you don't want to run topology on here to check for gaps and overlaps. Instead, so they've devised these tools that allow you to go and identify, not fix, but identify that there's, for example, a gap, an overlap here. And then you can go in and use the tools to fix them. So let's go and do a couple things first. Let's go in here and let's go and build our overall extent here. Let's see what we've got. And when we go in here and zoom, we can see that we've got points here. The way that you can fix this is you can say, well, I've got these 2 points and there's an overlap in here. Maybe let's merge these together. And it's supposed to go where point number 1 is. Let's go and do that. Let's go back out here again and look to see, is there a gap? And there is no gap or overlap anymore because we fixed it with that merge points. We didn't go and tell it to run through and crack everything again. We just said, let's identify those areas where we have them, and then we can apply whatever fixes we think the best thing to do would be. We could have also done align edges, align features. There's a lot of different ways we could have done, a lot of different tools to fix those, quote, topology issues, but we could have done those. That is highlight on here. That's this here. Highlight. Oh, that's the second thing I want to do. Highlight is here. This for gaps and overlaps. But there's also another thing here in that maybe we have information. We want to check the quality of it. And by the way, this is on the quality workflows where we can correct things. We can merge points together. We can simplify them. We can reconstruct them. We can realign parcels. We can realign features. We can highlight gaps and overlaps. And we can go and find, for example, where we've got a mismatch. And this is going to create a display layer for us. So if I can say, do those tax lot lines where the distance doesn't match the actual COGO values on here, and it will create a display layer. And it will create a display layer and show me if I have any in here, and I do. So I can see, okay, this one here, let's go and zoom to it. And it will show me that this one actually says that this distance, this line itself, the COGO value says 89, but in fact, it's 1.06 feet difference between the actual shape length and the COGO values on there. All right, and it is, again, it does not go and change.
Hey, Frank, when it says
Yes,
that mismatch of 1.06, it doesn't tell you which, if it was shorter or longer on that mismatch. It just says it's a mismatch.
it does. It's correct. It does not tell you that. Well, let's see if we can fix that and check and see. So again, I'm looking to see what is being exposed right here as far as the attribute fields. Where is the shape length? Probably doesn't have a field here. Is he showing this? Close this out. There we go. Let's just put it up here so we can see it next to this distance field. All right. Let's save that out. Go and save this. So now when we go in here and we pull this thing up and look at it here, and which one is it? It's this one here. Get off of our tool here. So this one here, I'll get there eventually. Okay, so right now it's short. Let's go and store this and make this 92 feet. All right. And let's go back and redo this. 92 feet there. And let's make sure. I don't think we have to reset it. It should have reset it automatically. And you're right, it doesn't say it's plus or minus. If we look at this, let's look and see. Let's remove this. Let's look at what the actual definition query is of this layer. And it actually says that the absolute value of the distance minus the shape field is greater than 0.5 plus 0.001 times the distance, and the retire is null. So it doesn't tell you whether it's positive or negative. It just says the absolute value of those. So you're right. If you wanted to make this a little bit better, you could rewrite that definition query and go and display it that way. So we give you a positive or negative value on there. But right now it's just giving you an absolute value. Yeah. I never paid attention to it. Thank you. All right. So that's one of the ways we can go and do sort of error checking and quality control against the layers. We also have quality layers for line vertices, where you have extra line vertices on there, or where you've got really short lines. So let's go and display it against tax lots. And this is short lines in here. Let's open up that table and see if we have any really short lines on here. In fact, we do. Let's go and see what that definition query is. Is that the length of the field is less than a half a foot. That's really all they're looking for. If it's less than a half of a foot, it's going to go and display it on this. So in this case, we have here, zoom here to less than a half of a foot. There's the difference in there. What is this one here? It's interesting. Oh, I'm still displaying, I'm still showing that. So, anyway, those are the two. So what we tend to do, what we here at Panda tend to do is, in order to check the quality, we will go and create these parcel layers for each of the parcel types, whether or not we have extra vertices, whether or not there's a display mismatch, and we'll create it for each of them. And then we'll go and group these layers together. And this is tax lot quality checks. And then we can turn it off. And as we're going through, we can see, oh, that's where these things are. This is what we have to watch out for. All right. So again, we'll go ahead and do that. And sometimes we'll go and actually put them inside that. So it only is showing when we're showing that group layer on there. Comments? No comments? Nothing? All right. So I showed you how we went once we highlighted that there was an overlap. This basically is a series of tools that you have to go and fix those gaps and overlaps in here. You have align parcels tools, you have merge points, you have transform, you have align edge and align features tools. Those are the tools that will align and change geometry. They have nothing to do with records. They only have to do with changing geometry of the features that you have stored in here. These are not, with the exception of merge, align parcels and merge points. These three are standard Pro Tools. Control points. By the way, any questions on those alignment tools? Anything on there? I can tell you're all getting very quiet, which means to me, to use my metaphor of a sponge, it's starting to drip out your ear. You're not going to absorb a whole lot more than what you've sort of, over these 4 days, you've been saturated now. So I just to let you know, this is sort of my feeling of where we're at right now. Inside the parcel fabric, okay, we have the ability to have points that are set as control points. Those set as control points, those points do not move. They cannot move. Well, if we attempt to go and move a control point on here, let's turn these off. If we find a control point here, if I find a control point here and click on that control point, all right, there's my control point. If I attempt to move it, it will say, okay, you can move this. And then as soon as I attempt to move it, all right, it will not. What? Dean, you didn't set this. You didn't set that, Dean. You're supposed to preserve the location of it in 3.0. And maybe it was because it was 2.9. 3.0, this preserve, the fixed shape, constrain this and preserve this. That actually will prevent that from moving. So that now, if I go in here and select that, and just select that, and I say move, why is this not working? It's supposed to prevent me from moving that. It's the way it normally works. You're not supposed to be able to move it at all. It's supposed to give you an error warning on there. Sorry about that. Working with somebody else's data that I haven't set up is a little tricky. Sorry. It's supposed to be set up to not do that. All right. By the way, this was where Dean was giving all of those discussions about all the ORMAP tools. We basically are done with the lecture. What questions does anybody have? If you don't have any, I have a section here. It's in your slides about interesting little things that you can set inside of Pro. Not Parcel Fabric, but Pro, to make your life easier. So let's stop before we go in here. And what questions do you have?
I have a question.
Yes.
This is Andy from Clackamas. So what about, I don't know, going through the history of records or querying records from the past and like viewing changes over time? Is that something that is easy to do, or could you show us a little bit of that?
So the let's go and talk about this. So when we talk about history, and in what we're talking about is the fact that the individual features that are related to a record will be marked as being retired by a record with a stamp, a date stamp. It was retired on this date. Now, the stamping is actually done on a system level so that you have your current, let's see what we have as historic here. So this is the global idea of that feature. This is what the record that created it. This is the record that retired it. All right. And when it was created, when it was modified or retired, and it will put in there the modified date and time. All right. So this is the record that retired it.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the actual date it was retired. Beyond that, there has not been any functionality built in yet from Esri for the Parcel Fabric to go run through this. The structure's there. They just haven't figured out from an interface standpoint how to present that. It's one of the things they're actually working on right now for 3.2, not 3.1, 3.2. They're working on how to do this. And it's commonly referred to as being before and after maps, or several different, how pre and post. It's referred to a lot of different things.
Okay.
Esri has not done that yet. However, I have a client that actually has done this. He's done some pretty amazing things. If you go out, I'm going to go out to my website. If I go to my YouTube channel, our YouTube channel again, and if you look at, and those of you that get really into this, Kendall County. Kendall County, Illinois. Here we go. This is Kendall County, Illinois. This was a year ago. This is the first one or the second one. It might be that might have been the second one. I think we've got two of them out there. Anyway, in there, he actually demonstrates how he has set up historic parcels. Because he does current and historic parcels. Linking to documents that formed it. Yeah, he actually goes and links. He uses Python, and he goes and uses notebooks and linking over to documents and creates web maps of historic and can show his appraisers what it was before, what it was after an individual transaction, and the records. He's got the whole thing built. Josh is amazing what he's done. Kendall County, I ask you go ahead and look at this. There's actually 2 of them. Changing the record. He's got a record dashboard in place here, record types.
Yeah, that looks really useful. It's kind of type of stuff I'm thinking about. So
it is very intense. Josh is intense to begin with, but yeah, I would go here and look at this one. I'm trying to think. I think we actually had one before this. Let me go and do a search on Kendall. Of course, that's good. Nope, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to. That's dangerous. Land records. I think we have 2 of them in there with Josh. Josh actually has done 2 different workshops for us, and on one of them he went in, and then we asked him to come back and go a little bit deeper into it. And he's doing some amazing things out there. But look for that. Go out here and look and see it again. He demonstrated. Maybe this was the one. This was June of 21. This was the one here where he demonstrated this, and then he came back about a year later and did more. But look for the Kendall County demonstration of what he's doing. Again, if you really want to get into this, he's using Python, he's using Jupyter notebooks, he's creating web maps from the parcel fabric, using the records to go and pull things together. He's actually going and using the enterprise and branch versioning to look at individual dates and times and moments to go and pull together all sorts of historic information. He's doing updates of his published data sets so that on a nightly basis, he goes and kind of does a replica, but he uses, again, Python and the changes in the record to only figure out which features he has to update. Amazing things. Surprised that Esri hasn't hired him yet, but I think he's happy there at Kendall County. Yeah, that's a good place. That's a really great question. Thank you. But that is a very, very advanced topic on what he's doing.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Look there. See, you'll have fun. If you're really into that, you'll have fun watching that.
Right. Okay.
Yep. Okay, good. And again, that's well beyond this scope of here. What other questions? What else do we have? Any other questions? Nope. All right, then I'm going to ask you, do you want me to continue talking? I will talk for another 20 minutes to show you some of the settings that we have and we use within Panda Consulting. Give me a yes or no. Yes. Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure. One of the things that really bothers us is the fact that out of the box, ArcGIS Pro automatically tries to put a base map in your map document. Sometimes you just don't want a base map, right? You don't want to go and attach up there and have a base map coming in. So it turns out that in the options, okay, in your project options on here, and under the map scene, you have no base map. By default, it gives you the base map of your organization or a custom base map, and it always includes things in there you don't want. Real easy to go and set that and say, no, I don't want a base map on there. Don't put one in there for me. It also loads much faster, by the way. Setting default units. This is a good one. This is an interesting one. Those of us who are dealing with PLSS states and actually doing more mapping on here, this is where you actually set the units that you're going to be working with, the units of your data, all of that. Okay, so you will set the default units in here. So if I go in here and I go to my options, units, it's here that I go and tell it what my actual units are that I'm using. And you can see statute mile, foot, US file, US foot, yards, kilometers, meters. However, that's not everything. These, by the way, are the units that are available to you when you're using shortcuts and inputting values. What happens with chains? What happens with rods and perches and other things? Well, it turns out here that you can tell it, well, I want to put a chain on you, but maybe not just a chain. I want a US chain, or I want different types of units I can add. So if I have a rod, I can put in a rod, or I can put in, I think there's perches in here too. There's a rod in here. There's a vara if you're dealing with Texas. There's yards in here again. So here's all the different units that you can add. So I can add a chain. I add a chain. It will tells me that that chain is 20.1168 meters long, 66 feet. So again, remember, it's the equivalency to a meter is what this is coming in as. And it's going to appear to you as that chain, as an option when you go and input things in there. So if I click on here and go back over to here, and I go to create a line, let's go into a line here. All right, and I'm doing the line. Let's start a traverse. All right. And come on, let's do a traverse and use tax lot lines instead of starting point, and set my bearing. Set my bearing 45 degrees north, and let's go and do 10 chains on here. All right, it will go and input now with chains. I can add units in here that aren't normally on the list of drop downs. Okay, it's nice option in here.
I have a question related to that.
Yep.
Is it possible to, when you use the measurement tool, to find alternative units of measurement, such as acres or chains or whatnot?
Andy. No.
It's annoying.
No, it is truly annoying. Because maybe we want to go and change the measurements in here, and you can't right now do that.
Right. Okay.
I definitely would go and put something up on the idea page, because that is needed. Yeah, it is needed. And by the way, it's distance units, there's angular units, how you want to measure angular units, and you can actually tell it what your default is. Area units on here, location units, direction units, what you want as your default, all that. That's units that you're dealing with when you're editing and working inside of ArcGIS Pro. Good tip. Set them, especially add chains and rods, whatever other ones you need. There you go. Adding chains and links and poles. You could do that. Start and stop editing. This is one that a lot of people, when they first start ArcGIS Pro, by default, when you start ArcGIS Pro, it is editing. It starts you editing. And you can actually go and add this button that says start and stop editing, so that recognize, depending upon what type of data you're working with, sometimes you don't want to start editing. You don't want to do that. Well, by going to the project, let me go in and discard all this so I don't have to worry about it. All right. So going to the project and going to options, editing. Underneath there is a section called session. And on there is enable and disable editing from the edit tab. If you uncheck that, click OK. If I go back here on my edit tab, I no longer have that option to start and stop. But if I go back in here, go to my edit and say session, enable that, automatically go and enable that and go back here. I then have a start and stop editing button. ArcGIS Pro will still go and put locks on a file geodatabase. So you want to be careful with it because of the way I work and interact with it. I have a start editing and stop editing. Some of my team, because they're constantly editing, they don't have it. They always want to be editing on there. By the way, this is the list by editing and tells you what you can edit and not edit. From experience, I find that I don't change that much. I set them all up to be editing. And if I don't want to, in the parcel fabric, if I don't want to go and edit it, I turn that group layer off. I don't edit tax parcels at all, or don't edit lots on here. If I turn off the display, you can't edit it. Just be aware of that. Start and stop editing. This is a big one. Saving edits. Okay, by default, here is it, down in session. By default, ArcMap never let us automatically save edits. Well, in ArcGIS Pro, we do have this option to say start or automatically save your edits. And when we do that, we can tell it to automatically save according to minutes or the number of operations. This is like a child who for Christmas asks for a puppy. You don't always recognize the consequences of what you're asking it to do. Be careful with this. If you tell it to automatically save edits, it will then automatically, whatever interval you have set, save your edits for you, which seems like a good idea, except that when you save edits, you can no longer undo past that save. So if you're in the middle and doing a lot of editing, maybe you don't want to automatically save the edits. You want to go and leave it up to you as far as whether or not it gets saved. All right. This next one here, also the save edits when saving the project. Because now there's an option to, under general, application general, you can actually create a backup copy of your project file, or in ArcMap terminology, your map document. You can automatically create a backup copy of that file. And I'm opening up this and I'm going to my desktop, and here's the actual folder I'm working in. And where is it here? This should, I think I have it turned off on mine. But there's actually a .backup folder that gets created. Make sure I'm showing hidden. Show hidden files. There you go, .backups. It actually creates a file inside the .backups folder of your project file. All right, and it will do it on whatever time interval you have set here. Here, the time interval, every X, it will go and create that backup file for you. Not a bad idea. However, be aware that when you do that, this thing here, right below the autosave, it says automatically save your edits when you're saving a project, which is a good idea. When you save your project, save your edits. However, if you tell it to automatically save a backup of your project, that's saving a project. So every time it saves the project, it saves your edits. So just be aware of the interconnections between these and just make sure you understand what you're actually telling it or asking for. Under here, project, whether or not you wanted to create one, do this, and whether or not under editing, you wanted to save the edits when you save that project, because it will, by setting it to 5 minutes, if I set this, it automatically will save every 5 minutes for me. Careful. And depending upon the quality or the quantity of the data that you're editing, it might actually interrupt the processes that you're working on. You can go and ask it to go and automatically pop up a dialog to save your edits if you have autosave on. But again, that means you're going to get interrupted every 10 minutes or every how many often you have that interval to go and save your edits. Personally, I try to work a little bit smarter, and I want to control how that gets saved and such. Just be aware of those things in here. Yeah, I think that's probably, yeah, it's probably as good as any for us to go and stop. All right. Any other questions that we might have on here? We're coming up about 6 minutes to noon on here. Any other questions? If not, I actually said I was going to show something to Robin, and who was it that actually went and asked me to go and do an easement? Are they in here right now? They sent me something. No. All right. If you want to stick around, I'm going to go a little bit past noon here because I'm going to go and show Robin. I think it was Robin, right? Robin, the PLSS, and a little couple tricks in creating that survey specific parcel fabric.
Yes,
and
it
I'm going
was
to go.
me.
Okay, I'm going to go and show you that if you want to stick around. All right, are we good? Listen, anybody that wants to cut out, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. School's out, no more homework, all right? But please continue to sort of get out of our comfort zone, start using Pro. It's amazing the tools that Esri has put in here, and every single iteration, they continue to make it better and better and better. I recently, I had a couple clients ask me to teach them ORMAP, and I'm like, I don't do it anymore. There's no reason for anybody to be using ORMAP anymore. So it's time to get past that. So think about moving forward. All right, please, thank you. And again, thank you all. Thank you all for letting me do this. If you want to stick around, we're going to go deeper into some database design, setting up a parcel fabric, and those sorts of things. And I will continue to have this on the recording, so I'll keep recording this. All right. But if you want to go to lunch, wonderful. Thank you. Take care. All right.
Thank you, Frank. Yeah, it was really insightful, and it helped me fill in a handful of gaps that I was having with the process. So I really, truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I mean, even though we do have, there's 16 hours, when you're first exposed to this, this is really overwhelming. There's a lot to this, and it gets really complex. And then just understanding workflows and when do you use this and when do you use that, and it takes a while.
And for me, it's also like, you know, I took it the first time back in August, but we also had a secondary training after it got rolled out to us. And there's slight different changes in how different things or how parcel fabric's done. And I'm just like, all right, which is which? I wanted to go back and go sort of like listen to you and pick out different things and that sort of stuff, and sort of see how we can optimize our workflows.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. So,
and there's also differences between trainers and teachers. I mean, I tend to teach it differently than Esri does. But again, it's just differences in the way we teach.
Perfect. Thank you, Frank.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go and open up a new view, and I'm going to go and open up a where am I here? A catalog view. This, by the way, over here, this is called a catalog pane. And what I'm going to do is open up a big catalog view, which is all of this. This is considered ARC catalog. This over here, this was that type of ARC catalog that you put into ORMAP. It's limited. This over here is everything. This is the big kahuna here. That's a catalog view. All right. In here, I've got a folder, and hold on. This folder here has the fabric, and inside of here, I have a geodatabase. And if we look at that geodatabase, it actually has a parcel fabric in it. And that parcel fabric, actually, if I look at the properties of it, because Robin, you were talking about, well, what happens if I want to create a parcel fabric that doesn't have tax parcels in, but has PLSS and survey type thing on here? This is how you do it. All right. So in order to go and do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and let's get up here. I'm going to create a new file geodatabase. All right, a new file geodatabase, and this file geodatabase is, I'll just call this survey. Survey. Now, a parcel fabric must reside inside of a feature data set because it has topology on it. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and create a feature data set here. All right, and we're going to call up the feature data set, and we're going to call this survey data, feature data set, and we have to tell it what our actual projection is. And I'm just going to tell it to import, and I'm going to import the Polk County one, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Okay. There it is. There's the Polk County projection. And it's going to go, and once I click run, it's going to go and create a feature data set inside of there. All right. So if I go and refresh this, all right, let's go here. Survey, there's the feature data set, and there's nothing inside there. So let's go and create a parcel fabric. Literally, it's this easy. Right click, say new parcel fabric. What's the name of it? Survey PF, survey parcel fabric. Boom, it will create a parcel fabric. That parcel fabric will have the core components. It will have points. It will have connection lines. There we go. It has, there's the parcel fabric controller object. It has adjustment lines. It has a relationship class over to my connection lines. It has points, records, topology on here. I've got no parcel types. So this is blank, nothing in here, but it does have those, the core. It has the controller object, it has points, it has connection lines, it has records, and it has topology set up. Now I'm going to start designing the parcel fabric. So I'm going to create a parcel type, and I'm going to go to manage and say add a parcel type. What type of parcel do I want to add here to this? And I'm going to call, these are surveys. So in this case, your surveyor can go and add surveys into this. We could add PLSS components on here, townships, sections, quarter sections. These are all parcel types.
And each of those components of the PLSS would have to be a separate parcel type. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, yes. Now, just also to let you know, with these newer versions, as the sequence in which I add these are the sequence in which they'll appear inside of the table of contents. The first one I add will be up on the top and down through those. So let's do surveys first. All right, and let's go ahead and add that. So what it will do, if you watch over here, it will add a survey polygon, survey line, and a record has surveys. record has survey polygons, record has survey lines. It has, here is your survey polygons, survey lines. It adds those. It is the minimum number of attribution on there. So the lines, if I go in here, the lines will have created by, retired by, a parent line, direction, distance, radius, has the standard COGO, has COGO type, ground grid, rotation, scaling, accuracy, fields. These are for least squares adjustments, labeling positions, and standard types of that. It will add those all in there. Same way with the survey polygons. It's the same thing. This is for every standard parcel type that you add. It will add the name and then everything else. So there's no real attribution on these yet, but let's go now and add, let's call a quarter section. Okay. Again, you can name these whatever you want. And it will go and do the same thing. Right. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this. And then I'm going to add sections. And I'm going to add townships. And again, you sort of customize your own to whatever you want it to look like. Okay, so I have built the overall structure. And if I go in here and tell it to go and add my parcel fabric to a new map, it will go and load that parcel fabric and all of the parcel types I have and automatically group them together and set it all up for me. It's set up now. These things don't have any attribute fields in them. If I look at it, it has the name field and that's it. If I look at the design, there's nothing in here that really, other than the name field. So you can design the individual attributes for you on here.
Good.
Okay. So at this point, you've got the structure. And now you start designing, okay, well, what do I do with my attribution? So let's go in as an example. This is the attribution for the township. And I'm going to go to my designs. Well, it turns out that in my catalog, I have this here. This is in fact a township. It's got quarter section. It has townships on here. Let's go in, I think they call them PLSS townships, yeah. So this, I have some fields that this other client decided to have on here, all right? And he used, this is the standard local government information model attribution for the townships. I can go and I'm in Data Designer. I can go in here and say, copy these and go over here to my new township one. And I can say, paste them in there. I now have added those attribute fields.
Yay.
To, okay.
Yay.
So this is
Now,
another thing.
I don't have access to that client because it's not my client. You said there's something in the government, local government.
That's the local
database?
government information model.
Oh,
I can
okay.
go, if you want, I can send you sort of the overall structure of that for you.
That would be great.
Yeah. Or I could just do it right now. And okay, so that's the townships. Let's go and do the sections. Let's go back here. Let's go back here to sections. Let's go and open up the data design for that. These are the sections. Let's go back here to the sections and look at data design here for that. And what they've done is they've taken and duplicated that. So they have that capability, and we'll add that over here. And we'll save that.
I'm going to ask Brittany if she's paying attention. She's my coworker. She's my database person.
Okay, so now we've added those here. Let's go back here and do the same thing to the quarter section. The fields. All right, and then let's go to my catalog and go back to the quarter sections. This is the design that they used. And again, they have townships, they had everything up to this point, and then they go to these. Now, it turns out that these are some domains. We want to make sure that we copy the domains over when we do this. So we will have to go and do that. And this is quarter section again. Go in here and paste this. There's the quarter section. All right.
So Brittany, I hope this is answering your question on how to start a parcel fabric from scratch.
So let's do points now. Okay, we're going to go and do points, and we're going to look at the fields that are default in the parcel fabric points. And then go back to the catalog and go to their point feature class, parcel fabric points, and see if they have anything different in here. Because this again is inherited from the ORMAP parcel fabric. They have some others in here. They got some really weird ones in here.
Is this where you would want, where I would put control in?
Ah, yes. So, but let's look and see what's in. This is the standard one. Okay, it has the name. Is it point? Is adjustment?
Is fixed, preserve.
It doesn't have anything regarding what type of control. So in here, again, some of this original stuff, they had some point IDs, they have survey data, they have monument type, they have procedure. They don't have the type of control point, but they do have those. So let's, there is some in here we can go and capture. Again, we want to make sure that if we're capturing and if we're copying attributes over that have domains on them, that we also copy those domains over. And we're going to show you how tough that is. I probably should have copied those domains first, but I didn't.
That's okay. We don't have any data in there to domain against.
Yeah. So again, this local one looks like there might have been a local already. No. A point type. It's a good one. Point type. So we'll go back here and we'll look at point type. There it is. Point type. There's a domain called L corner type. L corner type. Let's go in here. This is the Waukesha. Let's look at the domains of the Waukesha. Oh, Brittany, you should be doing this in Pro. L corner type, right?
That's all she works in is Pro. I'm the one that's the legacy.
Copy that. Let's go back to the new one. All right. And this is our new map doc, our new survey. Let's go to domains and let's paste this one in. All right. It will go and paste the type of corner in here. It has the values in here. Sorry. Has all the values in here. Save this out. So it's a process of you build the skeleton.
Sure.
You build the parcel types in. Once you've got the parcel type in, then you design your overall attribution. What are you going to look for? What are you going to put in here? And let me go here to points, parcel type. L corner type, I can actually tell it now. It's got my domain on here. All right. What else? I have L monument type. LR monument type. LR monument type. I should copy that over. All right, into
Yeah, I
here.
think my surveyor is going to be very excited about this.
Good. Type that one in. And again, you can edit and modify these domains however you want. But oh my gosh, ArcGIS Pro and the data designer, so much nicer than what we used to do. So much nicer.
Oh yeah, this would all have to be
Monument type.
typed in and built
Oh yeah, subtyping
table by
everything.
table.
So nice. Coordinate procedure. Let's go back here to coordinate procedure. On here, this is, sorry, there, here, this one. Paste coordinate procedure in here. Oh. By the way, I really like this domain usage, even though I didn't, it actually tells us what feature classes are using which domains.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So coordinate procedure, go back here. I actually will now coordinate procedure. There they are. Coordinate method. Again, just coordinate method. If I were smart, I would have done them all at one time, but
That's okay. Repetition is good.
yeah. All right. So again, so now coordinate procedure. There we go. Coordinate method. There we are. So, I mean, this is control point historic. I think this is current or historic. I mean, just build this as you want.
Yeah.
As you're going through. And then once you bring it in there, let's go in and get back to ArcGIS Pro and then a map document, not the fields. Let's look at this map document here of this. And then it comes down to, okay, now that I've got that in here, let's go and actually design it inside of Pro. Now with this, I have an option. I can design the data source, which means adding attribution, deleting attribution, defining that attribution, or I can go to the actual map, what it looks like in the map. And it's at this point where we go and say, okay, we're going to go and take the area and we're going to make the area, when we're going and editing it, we're going to put it at 2 decimal places. And we're going to go and tell it that this is in fact square feet, so that when you display it, it displays it that way. The data sets the structure, the actual layer component will go and tell you what it looks like. All right.
Yep.
Done. So just
Great.
be aware that on the points, you do have that attribution that says whether or not it's a control point. And the control points are set by is fixed. And this should be yes or no. And, you know, whether it's fixed or not, and whether or not it is the values are to be preserved. That's how you set control points.
And you said that preserve is only in 3. It's not in 2.9.
I don't think it took as much effect in 9, in 2.9.
In 2.9.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, because we're
I'm
right
not
now
sure.
we're holding on 2.9 just because the state's kind of holding on 2.9.
And it might still work in 2.9. I didn't pay much attention to it back then, so I can't tell you for sure.
I mean,
All right.
obviously, if it's not there, that's not there.
Yep.
I mean, we may be in 3 before I have this all up and running for him anyway.
Yeah. So, okay. What else you want?
You've given me a lot to work with to start with, because
So
the
what I'm,
next thing will be, of course, is to migrate the data over. But I think between Dana and I, we can figure that out, because he's written all of the transfer data. All we have to do is tweak it for the layers that are going to be in the survey one and call it from the, I'm pretty sure I can do all that in the arcade piece, or in
Okay.
he did them as Python.
okay.
So
I hope that helped you. I hope you enjoyed this.
I
Hope
did.
you got something out.
I absolutely did. I may be taking this again, but
Okay.
that's okay. I've got the videos.
As I've told Dean, as I've told a couple of people out at Esri, find a reason for me to go out to Oregon. I want to go out there. I love travel, but nobody's found a reason, or nobody's found a reason to pay me to come out there. So
Yeah,
we'll just do this remotely.
I think Zoom's kind of killed a lot of our travel options.
I think you're right.
Because it's so much easier to do it this way.
Taking care of a lot of the expense, definitely.
Yes, it
So,
has. But I'll see what I can do. See if we can get you out here.
yeah. Unfortunately, my Hilton Honors is like I'm losing all the points. So, all right. Anyway, I'm going to stop the recording. We don't need this on the recording anymore.